Good evening and welcome to another episode of Breaking Reality. I am your host, Joshua McGuire, and tonight we have Diana Robertson with us from Runes and Ravens, and we are going to be discussing surviving religious trauma. So let's go ahead and get into this conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your past that leads into this conversation so people can kind of understand why we're having this conversation.
All right. Oh my goodness, there are so many different points to start to enter the story from. I was raised in a Romanian Pentecostal community. It was very tight-knit. So it was in America. I was actually born the day after my parents got to America. So I was almost an airplane baby. But I was raised in this community where, it's the Romanian language, Romanian food, Romanian people. For all I knew until I went to school, I was in Romania. I didn't really have, as much, time within the world, until school started. And the childhood part of it was fine. It was safe. It was protected. It was, it was a big family, cousins around all the time, constantly doing things with family, constantly, just within the same group of people all the time. It's when, you hit your teenage years that they start, with the messed up kind of talk of, that women are only here really to, to serve their men, to become that, the whole quiverful movement,
that point in time where they're starting to groom you for womanhood.
Yeah. And in that community, it was normal to have, 16, 17, 18-year-olds married off to older men who are, in their mid to late 20s, some in their 30s, and, to actually be married in high school. And I was at a point when I was 17 where I kind of had to decide, okay, am I going to, go into the real world and, go to college and have my own life, do my own thing, or am I going to do what's expected of me? And right. I had this, my mind was basically like, if I end up meeting somebody and I get married at 18 and do the whole Romanian thing, then okay. Maybe it'll be easier because I'll be within the culture and I'll keep my parents happy and my family happy. Family was a big deal because my uncle is the head of the entire Romanian Pentecostal communities in America, Canada. They're all over the world, and he's the head kahuna. And so, everything that I did.
Right. Everyone's looking right at you because they're looking directly at the family. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big deal. So I ended up meeting somebody in I was born and raised in Arizona. Met somebody in North Carolina at my cousin's wedding. Within a year and 2 weeks, I was married. And that was typical. That was normal for the the community. But it's when you are a married woman within the church, that's when things get twisted. That is like when things get, sick. No matter what kind of issues you have, the church gets involved. If you, ask for advice, ask for help, it's always the woman's fault. It's always, well, you're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. You need to take more time, in this area. You need to offer yourself more to your husband. You're not allowed to have a hobby. There's no identity whatsoever. Right. You can't have an identity if you're a woman. And
no, not at all.
I remember one time.
It's that whole be subservient and be submissive to your husband. The woman has to do what the husband does because he's the head of the household. And I know that. Like, I grew up in kind of a similar family, not the whole Romanian culture and stuff. I grew up in a full gospel non-denominational household where it's that kind of almost Pentecostal, but just without all the really strict rules around dress and makeup and all that. But a lot of the same craziness that's involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up inside of that, and inside of that church, and inside of that culture, inside of that family mentality, where it's like what you're talking about with your uncle. They base everything on what you do and how
Mm-hmm.
everyone perceives what you do, how it affects them.
Oh yeah.
Not you. It's how I always got, well, Joshua, don't do that. You're going to make us look bad. Or
Yeah.
don't say
Oh, yeah.
that. You're going to make us look bad. And I'm like, why in the, how in the hell is what I do
Mm-hmm.
have anything to do on you other than the fact that you're claiming it does?
Yeah. Well, in the church that I came from, it did affect everybody because of the way that it's just all gossip. Everything is
Well,
gossip. Everybody is mistreating each
and
other if they're not living up to a standard.
and that's exactly how it worked in the communities here too, because that's what it
Yeah.
was. Mom didn't want me saying certain things or acting a certain way or reading certain books or, going against the status quo because,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the people are going to say stuff and it's going to get back and it's going to make our family look bad.
Yeah.
And that was that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like a minute part of it, to be honest, though.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, go ahead and go on into some of the other stuff that you went into with your stuff. It's just, it's one of those things that whole image and you having to
Mm-hmm.
maintain that image is something that I think anyone that has went through any kind of religious trauma and any kind of organized religion or religious community, that is the first thing they beat into you. Is you
Mm-hmm.
have to maintain a certain image. And if you don't maintain that, you're the problem.
Yeah, we functioned under that whole umbrella system of, the husband is over the wife and the children, and Jesus is over, and the church is over the husband, and then Jesus is over, everybody else, and God is above, that whole system was
Right.
what we functioned under.
That
so,
lovely patriarchal hierarchy, because it's only
Yeah.
men involved until the very bottom.
Yeah, and anytime I tried to do anything, there was always something to be said. If I remember it being such a big deal that I brought, I was, let me see, I think I was like 22 at the time, 21, and I brought Twilight, the book, to church one day because I was the one that was the only one my age. I had moved from Arizona to North Carolina after I got married. The next person under me, age-wise, was 10 years younger than me. The next person older than me was, I think, 10 years older than me. So I was the only one at my age right there in the middle where I was like, I had just come out of, high school a couple years back. I didn't really have the social aspect of the real world, by going to college and whatnot. So I was still very much like a, 17, 18-year-old in my mind. And I brought the book Twilight because nobody talked to me at church. It was a small church in North Carolina, but it was still run by or still connected to my uncle in Arizona.
Right.
The big main church is in Arizona.
Right.
My
It's
uncle preaches.
kind of like the whole, like how Mormons are based out of Salt Lake City, but everything.
Yeah.
All the churches run back to that Salt Lake City church.
Yeah. And I brought the book just to read something, just to do something while, I was waiting for, my husband to come to the car after, all the chatter after church. And I had this girl come up. She was like 13 at the time. No, she had to be younger than that. She was like maybe like 11 or 12 or something. And she came up to me and she's like, "Is that Twilight?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she asked if she could borrow it. And I didn't think it was like that big of a deal. I was like, "Yeah, sure. I just have, this last, like, I'll bring it to you next Sunday, or I think it was Thursday when I was going to see her next, because we had church like every day. It was ridiculous. But
yep, I know that too.
Yeah. And I brought the book to her, and then it was this big thing with the parents of how could you, you are a married woman. You shouldn't be influencing the youth, the children, you're giving them these worldly books. It was the stupidest thing. I'm like, it's just a book. But fast forward 2 years, all the women who complained were watching all the movies.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what about all the drama? What about all the crap that you guys put me through over just bringing a book? Like, it could have been drugs, you know?
Right.
It could have been
Yeah.
something so much worse, but no, you know, I was bringing the world
Oh
to
dear God,
me.
it's a book. They're going to educate someone.
Yeah, it was
They're gonna
ridiculous,
they're
but
gonna give someone the idea of forming a free thought on their own.
but it was a lot of pressure as a married woman in that church. Like, you were always sort of on call for anybody. If somebody called and needed something, okay, you know, I'm packing up the kids, you know, and I'm going to, you know, be there to take part in whatever. It was just a lot of, you know, you can't have your own identity. You can't have a hobby. You can't do, you know, you can't watch certain things. You can't do certain things, you know, without having some kind of judgment against it. And I was very much still trying to find who I was. And I was trying to balance, you know, like running a whole house, you know, taking care of kids by myself, helping my then husband run, you know, his business. And it was just like, you know, all these stresses of everything just, you know, over the years piled up. And it was like, I couldn't go and do anything for myself. I started just begging, can I just have 1 hour a week to just go to the Latta plantation, which was nearby, you know, our house at the time, just to sit for 1 hour with nobody talking to me. Like, I just need like an hour where nobody's asking me for anything. Nobody's around me. And oh my gosh, I got so much crap from everybody about that. You know, that you shouldn't, you know, what do you want to turn your back on your family? What's wrong with you? This is what you are. This is what God wants of you. And
God forbid you take an hour out of 24 for yourself.
Yeah, no, it was a big no-no.
That you're not in 100 complete% servitude, 24/7, 365, ready to bend to anyone's whim that needs you. Because I mean, I know how that goes. The whole, well, you honor the elders, and you know, if the elders need anything, you're there for whatever the elders need, and your family and everything else. And like, the hierarchy was the same. It was God, Jesus, church, husband, wife, kids. You know.
Yeah.
And then everything else fell out of that, you know, even like additional family, like extended family, you know, fell out of that, you know, kind of came off of that. But grew up in that same stuff. But I grew up kind of differently I didn't grow up where I was expected to fall into that role, obviously, because I'm a guy. I got from a young age, oh, it's ordained that you were with this family. It's ordained that you're going to become a man of God. It's ordained and it's prophesied that you're going to be this and you're going to do this. And so from like, as far back as I can remember in the church, I had people coming over and like giving prophecies over me that I'm going to be this powerful man of God and I'm going to do all these things. And like, this is random people. I have no idea who these are. These are strangers that are coming to this church at like traveling like speakers and guests and stuff. And I'm just like, who in the hell are all these crazy people? And how they know all this shit about me? I'm like 7. I'm like, what in the hell? I just want to play with my G.I. Joes. Leave me the hell alone. Like,
yeah.
I was hiding under the pew playing, you know, ignoring all of you guys while you do all your crazy shit. Leave me alone. Why are you dragging me out of here? Telling me I got to go be a preacher now. I'm 7. I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. They already have my kids. I mean, I have joint custody, you know, with my ex-husband. And so my kids still go on Sundays to church with him, but they at least have that 1 foot in and 1 foot out now. And, but they're already like by 10 years old, they had women telling them like, it's time to put away childish things. You're a woman now. It's like, they're 10. They didn't even, you know, start their freaking period. And you're over here like,
right. It's like they condition you from such a young age into certain things. And, you know, it's one of those things that, to be honest, I struggled with it a lot through my teenage years, because I'm sitting there going, okay, well, you know, the Bible says all this stuff about free will, but I'm obviously being told I have no absolute free will. I've got to go do this because it's ordained that I do this. You have to
want it. And if you don't want it, then there's something wrong with you. You're a sinner.
Exactly. And so it's like, well, you've got to do this. This is what you're called to do. It's your calling. It's what you're meant to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And they play all these games and these manipulations with these words. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, you're basically telling me I have to go do this. Y'all get to choose what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all got to choose what you're doing in life. But because a handful of y'all got together and said, you know, oh, it's ordained that you're going to do this. It's prophesied that you're going to do this. It's blah, blah, blah that you're going to do this. And y'all decided that this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And none of you consulted me at all in any of this.
Yeah.
Because if you'd asked me at like 7 what I wanted to do, I would have been an astronaut or a firefighter, you know, not a preacher. Who the hell wants to be a preacher at 7?
Yeah.
That's not what you want to hear. You're going to be a preacher. Oh, shit. This is gonna suck.
It's that I feel like that is the equal of you're just gonna be a wife and a mother. That's all you get. That's you have limitations in place, you have rules in place, and this is what you get.
I mean, in a way, it kind of is. It is because it's very limiting. It's very restricting. It's very controlling, which is exactly the same thing that you're going through on that aspect. Is it's that same kind of control, and I'm just like, I don't even get the option to discover who I am. Y'all just tell me from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else got a choice.
Yeah.
But I was, because, and I don't get this. I was one of the only ones in the church that was saying all this shit too.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also one of the only ones in my age range and age group.
Yeah.
Like you, everyone was either like 5 to 6 years older than me or like 5 to 6 years younger than me. So I fell in this weird little gap in between.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. I mean, it's huge when you don't have peers, you don't have anybody to lean on or anybody to really, you know, look up to or look to for help or support in anything when you're the only one at your own developmental stage, mentally, emotionally.
Well, that, and I imagine you was probably like me. You were even then though, developmentally, you was, and emotionally, you was way beyond what they were. Even people, even remotely near your age, because you were just dealing with so much crap. You had to be. You was forced to be.
Yeah, it was, and that was one of the things that, with all the, you know, the stress and the anxiety. Like in my early 20s, I had chronic anxiety. It was so bad. I had a mini stroke when I was 22. At 24, I had stomach ulcers the size of golf balls in my gut that I was like vomiting blood. It was so bad, and I was like, "What is happening to me? I'm in my early 20s, you know, mid 20s, fight these stomach ulcers, and I'm over here." You know, like my body just giving up on itself. And that's when I, you know, started just kind of doing things for myself. I, you know, got back to writing. You know, I'm a writer, and I spent a lot of time just writing and reading and making sure that I was taking that time for myself to just, you know, try to heal. But I was, I mean, I don't know how, you know, whoever's going to be watching this, you know, that what I do for a living, you know, I do the spiritual stuff for a living. But I was always, you know, very gifted from when I was very young. And so I was hyper aware of what was going on. And that's what drove me crazy about my uncle was how, you know, I loved my uncle. When I was younger, you know, I loved him. He was, you know, this good guy. He was somebody who, you know, was funny to me. He was, you know, he had kids, you know, that were my age. So, you know, I was always, you know, at their house playing with my cousins. And I loved my family and I wanted to make them happy. And I was hyper aware of the things that people were saying and the way that they were behaving and then the way that they were preaching. And things weren't matching necessarily. Or I would, you know, notice this other pastor doing something and I'd be like, why isn't my uncle calling him out on this? Why isn't my uncle calling, you know, taking care of this situation if he's, you know, this big, you know, leader of this whole thing? And so I knew who I was by 14. I was, and I should have accepted that. I didn't accept it though, because it was, you know, it was sinful. I was very pagan hearted.
Right.
when I was young. I had a deep connection just to nature, trees, specifically. I didn't have trees in Arizona, so when I first saw trees like pine trees and oak trees, and just these things towering over me, I was so just awestruck by trees. And I discovered the Green Man when I was 12, about 12, and I didn't know back then that he was, a pagan, deity, or
Right.
a figure. And when I found out about Celtic paganism around like 13 or 14, and I saw the Green Man in the book, I was like, wait a second, like it just, there was all these little emotional things that were kind of clicking for me on the spiritual side of things that didn't match up with the religion that I was being raised in. And when I was 17, like I was saying before, I made the conscious decision of, I don't even believe what my church is preaching, but I want my family to be happy. I want to fulfill the expectations. I want to be there for everybody. I want to be that godly, the good person, And so I went and I got married. I didn't really feel like there was another option for me that was going to keep my family, loving me or really caring, which was true, because nobody really loved or cared about me when, the marriage went, down the crapper, and I started asking for help. And I had women legit tell me, it's better for you to die at the hands of your husband than to stand before God, as a woman who went and got divorced. Something along those lines.
That right there is so abusive. Abusive.
That it's heartbreaking. It's like, after everything, all the time and the effort and the energy and the care, the real emotion that I put into being there and fulfilling, this part that I was expected to play, even when I didn't fully want to. It was just me trying to do the right thing. Right. And it's like, well, you just go and die. That'll be better for you and for all of us, because it's going to fall on them as a church. If somebody, goes and divorces, then it's going to make the church look bad. It's going to make my uncle look bad, my brothers, my parents. And at that point, there was something, I won't say who said it, but somebody within my family told me that maybe I need to go and get medicated to handle the stress and the anxiety of what's going on, so that I wouldn't go and get divorced. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Say, if you need to get medicated for anything, it's for dealing with all the stupid bullshit of all the people around you.
It was
like, that's what you need to get medicated. Well, they're the ones who need to get medicated.
Yeah, and that was the moment where I was like, they don't care. They do not care what happens to me. And I was like, I had to, as I always say, I'm not even into astrology, but I think this is funny. I'm a Pisces sun and an Aquarius moon. And I was like, I really had to gather up all my Pisces softness, and just really embrace the assholery of the Aquarius. And I've never left that, because that's what I had to do I had to pull out this, I had to be an asshole to be able to leave, to be able to get out and to be safe.
Well, right, because you had to become the bad guy in order to protect yourself. It's like, it's funny because there's a little reel or TikTok or thing going around where it's the audio is one of the people says, if I have to become the villain of their story, you know this one. If I have to become the villain of their story in order to protect my peace, then call me Thanos, bitches.
Oh, okay, that was actually a different one. But yes, I saw one today that was something about how the further you get from religion or something, the more the further you get into healing, the more you're okay with being the villain in somebody else's story. And I'm like, I saw that today, and I was like, that's
it's really true, because part of that healing process is going, you know what? I'm going to be the bad guy in their story no matter what I do, unless I conform to what they want me to do. And I'm not going to be happy doing that, so I'm not going to do that. So for my own personal peace and my own personal well-being, I'm willing to be the villain.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
at this point, it doesn't matter anyways what they all think or feel about me. They have all sorts of awful stories they're all telling each other. When I have some friends that are still in the church that again are just there because they are, they're married and they're not in a crap relationship like I was, and they're functioning. They're able
Right.
to function the way that they do. And the things that I hear that they tell me, they're like, oh, because I overheard this or I saw they're this, and I'm sitting there like, wait, I did what?
Oh yeah.
Tell me more. What did I do? When did that happen? Wow.
This is some
I have
steamy
such a
shit. I didn't know
story
I'd
to
done
tell.
this. When did I do this?
But at this point, like, I mean, I was even talking to my husband. I'm like, I'm not even mad at my ex anymore. Like, the first few years after you leave something like that, you have all this anger, you have all this bitterness, and I'm like, I mean, what he was doing, what he thought was expected of him as a man in the church, in his mind and his heart, he did what was right, through his goggles, it was right, and I mean, in my goggles, it was very much not right, and I had to do what I had to do. And at this point, I'm like, we are civil, we're able to, raise the kids, in a functional way where they're, they have not had, all sorts of the issues that so many kids have when parents divorce. We haven't had these huge, major, this major drama that happens with all that. So often. But so I'm like, I'm feeling pretty blessed right now that I have been able to move on with my life. Just today, I have been sitting here in my office. I was kind of cleaning up today, and I have this wall here that has all of these pictures on my wall here that I had when I was a teenager, when I first found the Green Man. And I had these same exact pictures when I was, an adolescent, and I used to just love them. I just sit here and stare at them. And I put them all up here when we moved into this house, and I had my own space. And as I was kind of moving stuff around today, I had to add my Cernunos to my wall. I just kind of sat back and I looked at everything, and I'm like, this is all I wanted when I was 14. Like it's something so simple. Like, I didn't want to go out and, do drugs, or to go out and, drink alcohol and, whatever, it wasn't like this, like, evil, sinful version of me that all the people in the church have always, perceived me as.
Right.
And I'm like, this is all I wanted, was just to have my stuff, to be able to dabble, to be able to study. Like, I couldn't even study. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't get a job.
That's the thing, is like, even for me, like, once I started having like my awakening and started finding my path, even trying to get the little tidbits of stuff to study along it while still living in that really strict Christian home. Oh God, no, so horrible. Like, because it was one of those things. You didn't have any privacy in the home, you didn't, you was gone. Parents would just go in your room, go through all your stuff, see what you had. If you had something in there you wasn't supposed to have, you were getting your ass chewed out for it, and, God forbid it was something evil.
Yeah.
Like, I remember at one point in time in high school, some of my friends asked me to come play Dungeons and Dragons, and Mom lost her shit. Like, it was one of those, you're going to end up possessed by a demon, and devils, they pray over those, they cast spells, those books are evil, just even looking at them can get you possessed by the devil. And I'm just like, it's a fucking book, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's paper, like cardboard and paper. It's not, it doesn't have, like, this book isn't going to magically take me over because I read something about a wizard or a gnome or, an elf. Oh, dear God. But the funny thing is, I could read the Chronicles of Narnia because they were written by C.S. Lewis. And that was okay.
Yeah.
Because they were written by a Christian author.
Yeah, the rules that they come up with are just ridiculous. I mean, I remember I was pregnant with one of my kids when I was in, I think, like a Walmart or something, And this woman told me that somebody walked by that had like a child that I think it was like if I remember right, it was like a child with Down syndrome or something. And we were walking by it, and this woman's like, "Don't look, don't look." And I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean don't look?" And they're like, "Don't look at anybody with like a disability or, birth defect or whatever, because then your baby's going to be born that way." I'm like, "What are you freaking talking about? That is not how this works at all."
Yeah, and see some of the superstitions that are kept inside those communities, so crazy. Like, I mean, it's just nuts. Like that. Like as soon as you started talking about that, I knew where you was going, because I've heard that one several times from people in those kind of communities and stuff. It was weird and stuff. Like, but it was like, see, for me, my whole ordeal got weird because when I was 15, I was working at a campgrounds as a weekend manager there. And we had a big Native American group come in. And during the course of the weekend, and now mind you, I'm 15, I'm still living at home, still deeply into church. We're going to church like, minimum 3 times a week. We're going to church, sometimes more, And so here I am, I'm out here and I'm working on the weekend. So I'm not going to Saturday night services, Sunday services, Sunday night services, because now I'm working, right? So like people aren't hardly seeing me around. And this one weekend we had this big Native American gathering come in, and they was doing sweat lodges, and they invited me to come down and join in on the sweat lodge one of the nights. And so I went down for the first night, joined in on the sweat lodge. Well, they invited me to come back for a second night. Well, after the second night sweat lodge, the first night we all sat around and we smoked a peace pipe and everything after, we had ceremony and we smoked and everything, and we sat around. And then the next day afterwards, we done the same thing, but then they started passing this cup around, and, they told me to take a drink. And little did I know I was about to get inducted into my path through a lovely little concoction called peyote. And so that was the induction of my path. And it was really funny because I went on a deep spirit quest that night. I really did. And like I saw a lot of things laid out and things. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, somewhat of the path similar to what I was told, but not the path that I was told, or not like the path that they perceive. So I go back, and for years and years and years, I can't tell anyone in my family about this, because if anyone hears that I ever done this, like it's going to be a full-on like exorcist, like I mean, it's going to be, oh, you're full of demons, and like next thing you know, there's going to be like 40 people from a church swarming around me with Bibles and
I've had that happen.
Yeah.
That happened more times than I can count.
Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've been in the middle of a bunch of people trying to pray the evil out of me, or to pray one thing in or out of me, something.
Yeah.
And it's all, it wasn't that I ever really wanted it. It was all them trying to enforce their will. And part of it is they end up manipulating you in a way to thinking that it's what you want too.
Yeah.
Or at least they try to do that.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They get trained on this crap. But I think that was part of my, again, I grew up in Arizona. And so I had to go to ESL, English Second Language, for the first couple of years of school. And in that school, it was, I was the only Romanian. There was a lot of kids from Mexico, and there was a lot of Native American kids from the reservations. And they had to drive, hours down to the school every day just to go to school. The reservations were way out there. And so it was just me. And then there was this one girl from Vietnam, and none of us spoke English, like really well with each other. Several of them didn't speak English at all. And so we just kind of used our hands a lot. And we, we became like the greatest friends when we were little. And there were no limitations for us, besides the ability to say the words that we wanted to say, but we figured it out. We even, taught each other how to say hello, in each other's languages and whatnot.
Right.
And so when I got older, the Romanian Pentecostal community is extremely racist. Oh my God. Still, I can't listen to the conversations between some of my own family members because I'm like, the racism is sickening.
I am right there with you. Like, the kind of community that I came out of is the community that breeds that white nationalist evangelical Christian bullshit. Like that just uber conservative, right wing, like extremist right wing, like fundamentalist Christians is like that. That's the kind of crap I came out of.
Yeah.
And
I didn't understand it.
Well, like, even my family, like my parents, I don't think are necessarily racist, but they'll use, like, mom passed away, dad's still alive, but they'll use racist terms now and then, and they won't think anything of it because they're like, oh, well, that's just how we were raised. And I'm like, you can't say that shit. Like, no. Like, there was one point in time not too long ago, a couple years back, me and dad was sitting in a Denny's at a truck stop getting something to eat after he had taken me to a medical appointment. It was like an hour and a half drive away, and he took me to the appointment because I was having pain issues, couldn't drive. We're sitting there, we're getting something to eat after the appointment on the way back home, and dad is saying like all these racist comments and stuff, and I'm like, Dad, you gotta shut up. And I'm like, why? It's because there's a table of like 3 really big dudes behind us that are looking at you like they're about ready to beat the shit out of you. And I'm not getting involved. I'm going to step back and just let them kick the crap out of you because I think you're going to deserve it at this point in time. I might even help them if you don't shut up.
Yeah, it's so hard to see people who claim so much, love and, that this is the loving religion. This religion is all about love and taking care of each other and, raising each other up. And then you hear that crap. It messed me up. And when I hit like middle school and I started, my parents, since, they were immigrants when I was younger, they really didn't, I think, catch on to a lot of the things that I was doing. Again, I didn't do anything that was inherently wrong besides getting books for me, about like different cultures. I did eventually get, into like the divination stuff. So I had like my first oracle deck, and a book on like Celtic magic. And I would hide those in my room. But that was the worst that I did. Like, I didn't sneak out. I didn't sit there and lie to my parents. I didn't sit there and, like the worst I did was hide these books. And I didn't even hide all of them because I had this obsession with ancient Egypt when I was in middle school. I taught myself in 7th grade how to read and write hieroglyphs. And I would sit there, like, we would go on, vacation together, and I would have like 7 books of ancient Egypt with me just because I wanted to delve into some other culture, into some kind of history that wasn't attached to this, idea that I was raised in. It was like a fantasy to me. And I was so convinced when I was 17 and I was in that place of like, okay, I'm either going to get married at 18. My other idea was I'm going to go be an archaeologist and live month to month in Egypt, like in a trailer. Like those are my options here. And that we see where I went, but that was like the worst that I did. But of course, all that wasn't really as accessible when you get older and you get married. And I obviously had the internet, so I would still kind of look at things occasionally, but I tried to step away from that because I had that inner battle of like, okay, I'm a Christian, but this is what I know. This is what's natural.
This is I shouldn't be looking at this because it's not the Christian thing, but this really just kind of resonates. It makes sense, Yeah, I get it because like I said, well, it's funny because that summer before I had that experience that I talked about at the campgrounds, which that happened in the fall. That summer was when I got my first introduction into any books on metaphysics. So the first book I got was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which my running joke is it has very little to do with Zen and even less to do with motorcycle maintenance. but it opens up some of the basic metaphysical concepts in it.
Yeah.
Very basic level, very basic level. But the book that really got me going in on metaphysics was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach.
Mm-hmm.
And that book just kind of opened up something, because even before then, I had this idea that what they were teaching in the church, the Bible, the way they was teaching it, what they was teaching, it didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't vibe, it didn't feel right. It's like, okay, it's like some of that like, okay, I can get with some of it, but some of it just no. Like all the
Yeah.
hatred and stuff, when like it it really feels like the Christian church preaches hate more than it does love, when
Mm-hmm.
love is the only thing the Christian church is supposed to be based on.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Christian church is supposed to be Christ-like, and all Christ ever taught was love. He was the original hippie.
Mm-hmm.
Wore sandals, walked around, talked about peace, love, fed a bunch of people. I mean,
Yeah.
hung out with a bunch of dudes. Original hippie. So, but I grew up in these churches where they just hated anyone that wasn't like them, and there was no tolerance. It was just a hate,
Yeah.
and it was ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those things that I always struggled with within the churches. Was, I mean, that was one aspect of it that I always struggled with, was all this talk of, well, this person you can't be, oh no, they're this way or that way, or God forbid, like in the community back then, finding out someone was gay was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. Because I grew,
Yeah.
like, I was born in 77, and like in the 80s and 90s, especially when the AIDS epidemic was really, really raging,
Mm-hmm.
like if it found out you was a homosexual, you might as well have been a leper to anyone in the
Yeah.
Christian community. Like
Yeah, that's how
that.
it still is in the church I came from.
Yeah. And now some churches are less that way now, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them still are.
Yeah. Oh, the
Yeah.
Romanians are awful about it. I remember the day my mom found out or learned what gay meant. It was in the car, and I remember the look on her face, and I remember my brothers all just kind of looking at each other like, oh no, we're gonna have to tell her.
Uh-oh.
but but even now, I mean, like that was one of my biggest frustrations was being at church while they were, preaching all their, love and all their, whatever, the hippie stuff. And then we go out to eat with the pastors, and we're all
Mhm.
sitting there around a table. And then they start talking about how they need to take all the gay people and put them on an island and set it on fire. And
Oh yeah.
I'm like, these are pastors. These are people these are deacons of the church. These are major, like, up top people. And this is how you're talking after you guys just sat there and preached about
And hey,
love and
I will say, this past Easter, I was out at my family's house, out at my dad's house, and my two sisters was there, and all of my one sister's kids, and the oldest of my oldest sisters, her son was there too. And we're all sitting there, and I'm sitting out in the kitchen, and they're all sitting in the living room. Everyone's sitting in the living room together, and they're having this big old chat. And they get on the topic of transsexual.
mm-hmm.
And they are just talking the most horrible shit, like the most vile, hateful trash about someone who identifies as transsexual. No one specifically, just in general. Yeah. And they were just having this conversation to have this conversation. They were just talking about how they all hate transsexual people, and like just so evil, so vile. And two people got up out of that room and walked out and came out into the kitchen where I was at, because I couldn't even stand to be in there, because I was ready to just like go off on people, and I was going to start a huge scene. My oldest niece and her husband got out, came in, and said, for a room full of Christians, they're a bunch of hateful people. And I said, you get it. You get it. And they're Christians as well. And they're like, that's not what Jesus taught. Jesus didn't teach any of that kind of hate. Jesus didn't teach any of that kind of stuff whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's not what being a Christian is. That's what some guy standing behind a pulpit has said, because they want to take the Bible and adapt it to their own morality and twist it around and use it to preach hate against anyone who's different.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of it is because of the translations and the ways the translations were done. The translation of the Bible was done to breed hate.
Yeah. Yeah. When they would start throwing Bible verses at me, I was like, their Bible, the Romanian Pentecostal Bible is, I think, 98 years old, the translation that they use. And it's something like that. It's in the 90s. And I'm like, you can't, I didn't accept anything that they would say with that Bible. I'm like, no, you don't get to use this Bible because this is a new version. This is not even what anybody else is talking about or looking at. This is your guys' version that's very specific to the, Romanian Pentecostal mentality of everything. And that just, I thought when I realized that, I think that was just another kind of snip of the fiber of whatever was connection, I had to that community was, it was like there's another little piece, knocked off there. I've kind of distanced myself a little more because of that. But
well, like the thing that I always like is, being more pagan in my path as well. I always get that. Well, hold on. I just completely lost the train of thought. It was, what was it? It was, I'll come back to me. Go ahead.
Love when that happens.
First, yeah, I just I started into it, and then all of a sudden it just poof, gone.
Yeah, I actually, I was very gifted from when I was young. I was having dreams, that were extremely symbolic. I was very, again, hyper aware of everyone's emotions and what everybody, was, how people were expressing themselves and how people, what people were hiding about themselves. My mom knew that I would have these dreams and I would have these feelings, and I would be so just like, Mom, this is going to happen. Mom, I have a feeling this is going to happen. And at one point, something did happen where she eventually, I think that was kind of like the nail in the coffin of like, oh, I'm going to listen to her now. I'm going to believe her now. But I didn't know until my 20s that my grandma and grandpa were both considered prophets, like respected prophets in the community. And I'm like, after all these years of me trying to be honest with what I was going through spiritually and feeling like I couldn't talk to anybody about it because, I would try to talk to my mom, but there was one situation that I asked for help in over this recurring dream that I was having. And she brought it to my uncle, who then announced in church that I was conversing with the devil and that, I needed prayers and that I needed, it was just, it was awful because it ruined any chance of me having friends in the church then.
Right.
Nobody wanted to talk to me, anymore. Nobody, I was just picked on all the time by my peers. I had their parents picking on me. I had the parents all talking crap, behind, not even behind my back necessarily. It was right there where I could see them, and it was just, it was so frustrating to be like, okay, I've been showing signs of this since 7 years old, and grandma and grandpa have had the same exact things, all this time, but nobody's cared to bring this up with me. Nobody's, thought to tell me this. And I remember having a conversation with my mom not long ago, just around my work because they're not, okay with what I do. But I don't even remember what the conversation exactly was, but it was about, spirits, and like entities and things like that. And my mom said something about her mom, who my grandma passed some years ago. And my mom would just be like, well, grandma, she knew what she was doing with all this, and you have to be really careful. You can't mess around with this. And I'm like, Mom, I've been messing around with this since I was 10. Like,
Yeah, it's like,
I know how to mess around now.
been doing this for a while, y'all. Don't, yeah.
Like, I just couldn't tell you about all this because you go to Cornell to my uncle and it's a scene, and then suddenly I have all these old men touching me in the front of church, praying over me, putting olive oil on my forehead,
I remember one time I got taken to a church, and the lady, her name was Sister Merle, and she was that quintessential big old, like, Southern kind of black preacher mama.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was a big lady, and she always had kind of that everyone was her child
Mm-hmm.
child type mentality. Like, it didn't care, you could be 10 years older than her, she'd call you child, you was her child.
Mm-hmm.
She had that mentality, and everyone called her Sister Merle. Everyone, no one ever just called her Merle. Everyone called her Sister Merle. Like, everyone did. You go into a doctor's office, you'd hear him say Sister Merle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if she was there, you'd hear them call her Sister Merle, and I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, for a long time, I thought she was a nun. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was just a thing that everyone in the community called her because she was a preacher.
Yeah.
But we ended up going to her church at one point in time, and her and my parents were real good friends. We got to her church, and I remember she goes, they called me up. She called for all the boys in the church to come up to get anointed. Mm-hmm. And I get up there, and she looks at me, and she goes, this one's particularly a little evil one. He needs a little extra anointing oil. And she took that bottle of anointing oil and unscrewed the cap and dumped it over my head.
Oh gosh.
Like, I was slathered in olive oil that was blessed. And apparently that was because I was a little extra evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had no female preachers. That would not happen. That's still a big no-no. Women have to be silenced. If you have something to say, you say it to your husband, and your husband tells the church.
Now, that is one thing. Sister Merle was not one of those women you would ever silence.
Mm-hmm.
You would try to silence that woman, she'd just get louder.
Yeah.
We need more of those. There was no silencing her. Now, I do got to say, for all of her craziness and some of the shit she would do and some of the shit she would say, she was one of the nicest, sweetest women I ever met.
Yeah,
but she was a handful. But, like, I mean, it goes back to that whole mentality, like you said. I'd go to these churches, and there'd be people that I didn't know putting their hands all up on me, praying all over me, and I'm just like, who in the hell are you people?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, even churches that we went to on a regular basis, there were people in those churches. I had no idea who the hell they were. I might have known their name, but that was it. I didn't know anything more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, I don't know. It was just strange. It's just weird. This whole mentality that you're just expected to conform and to fit into this mold that they push you into. And then on top of that, you have stuff like just even the content of what they preach, like not just the attitudes and stuff of the things. I remember as a small child when they talked about Abraham taking Isaac up on the mountain to sacrifice him, going, holy shit. Hold on. So at any point in time, God can just call up dad and say, go kill him?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, shit, this isn't cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, to a young kid, that's traumatizing as hell.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They're telling this in Sunday school, and I'm like, seriously, like, what in the hell, people? Like, if you're taking the stories that are in the Bible, taking them out of the context of a Bible, and told them to a child outside the context of Christianity and the Bible, parents would be throwing a freaking fit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
It's like the other day, someone in one of the groups, one of the groups that was in Mystic Witch, came in and started making some comments about. I posted up a meme that said, "After all this crap, we better be in the next Bible."
Uh-huh.
And this person said, "We are in the Bible," and I'm like, "What part?" And they're like, "We're in Revelations." I'm like, "What part of Revelations? The part with the dragon and the whore, or?" And they're like, "You're not funny." I'm like, "Absolutely, I am." And there is a dragon and a whore in Revelations. If you don't believe me, you haven't read the book.
Yeah, it was the angel of death going door to door, killing babies that really scared me as a kid.
Oh my God! And
because you couldn't stop that. There wasn't fighting that off. It would come and suck the life out of you. It was awful.
Yeah, that was another. The firstborn, all the firstborn, and then God forbid, they make a movie of that shit.
Uh-huh.
And then when do you watch it? You watch it on Easter.
Yeah.
It was just
and then
like
all the Left Behind movies.
Oh my God.
Those were scary when I was little too. They had us watching that when I was like 8.
Okay, so that's the age difference in us. Left Behind, I was in my 20s.
Yeah, it was still old. I mean, for us, it was still something that was considered old for us. But no, not the Left Behind, like with Kirk, whatever his name is. The other one, oh gosh, what was it called? Thief in the Night.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
That's what I meant, not Left Behind. It was those like ones from like it was like the 70s or something.
Yeah, like the Left Behind stuff was like pretty like
that was easy compared to Thief in the Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had us watching that when I was like 8 or something, and that was scary for me. That was messed up.
Yeah, and man, like a lot of that stuff is just so crazy. The way that these mentalities that they have of, I mean, I remember the hellfire and brimstone sermons of if you sin, you're going to die and you're going to be cast into a burning, firing lake, and there will be gnashing of claws and teeth, and you'll suffer for all eternity. And I'm just like, well, shit.
Don't even think the wrong thing because God's going to see. And
like even thinking the wrong thing is a sin, and you're going to go to hell for it. And like, if you have impure thoughts or unclean thoughts, or if you think anything that could be considered even sinful in thought or idea, it's the same as committing it. And I'm just like,
yeah.
What in the hell? And then you get into the weird shit where they're like, if what is it, like if one hand would lead you to sin, then cut that hand off or what? And I'm just like, y'all are fucking crazy. Like, I don't know what y'all doing, but this is some like cult stuff here. Like,
yeah, my church didn't even hide it. They actually, in Romanian, the communion is actually called act de cult, which is the act of the cult. They use their word in their title. And I'm sitting there, I remember, because in my old church, you could only take communion if you were baptized. And you didn't get baptized until you were like, 16, 17. You didn't get baptized when you were little, like some of the churches do. And I remember sitting there and watching everybody around me who was taking communion, because they would, pass it around and everybody would be holding, their little, they had a piece of bread. It was kind of like a pita bread that they would make. It wasn't like the little crackers. And then they would have their little cups with, grape juice in it. And everybody would hold on to theirs until my uncle got back up front, and then he would read a few verses, and then they'd eat at the same time. He'd read some more verses, and then they'd drink it at the same time. But I remember seeing everybody's hand go up as they were all drinking, everybody's head going back at the same, thing. And I'm like, whoa, like this is uncomfortable. Like, you guys are freaky. Like, this doesn't seem right at all.
and they have problems with pagans.
Yeah. Yeah, them with all their blood sacrifice talk and The
I
shows that they do for Easter
I have
and
pissed
how
off.
bloody they make it.
I have pissed off so many people by. I have Christians who will be like, magic and witchcraft and paganism and all that is evil. And I'm like, you know what? Your whole belief system is based on blood magic. Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, straight up. Your whole belief system is based off of blood magic. Shut up.
Oh, but it's different because God and Jesus in the
Yes.
Bible, it's different.
They have different blood.
Yeah.
It's
I tried to.
It's magical blood.
I tried to bring that up with my parents.
It's whatever
so often.
It's whatever that shit Charlie Sheen got a hold of. Did you ever see that whole Charlie Sheen skit on Funny or Die, the whole tiger's blood thing?
I remember somebody making a comment somewhere, and I went and I looked it up, but I can't remember the whole gist of it right now.
It's a whole goofy ordeal. It's supposed to have been like, it turned him into like being like the supreme everything because he was drinking tiger's blood.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and it was a whole mock thing. It was a whole joke thing. He that's what Funny or Die is all about. It's all just mocking stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't know. For me, the whole idea that certain things is okay, but certain things aren't when they're from a perspective that's not their own.
Yeah.
And
God forbid, having dreams of the future or of some sort of situation happening or some relative dying is not okay. But my grandparents, because they're older and they're filled with the Holy Spirit, it's okay for them. Yes. They're respected.
Yes, exactly. That double standard, that it's okay. And God forbid, like, as I got older and I really started getting into paganism and I started learning like the roots of paganism and then learning the roots of Christianity and how Christian adopted pretty much everything that Christianity is from paganism. They do not like it when you point that out.
Yeah, because they refuse to see the actual, they refuse to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was even preached about in the church, was you don't ask questions because they're going to have answers for you and they're going to make sense. But you have to have faith regardless. It's like you have to keep yourself as stupid as possible. Otherwise, you're going to find the way out. And they straight up tell you you're going to find a way to be led astray.
Oh, and, yeah, that's the words, led astray. Those are those magic words that they like to use.
That's what frustrated me. I'm like, what? Okay, so I have to sit here and be stupid for you guys to even act like you care about me, to even act like my life is worth anything. I have to sit here and pretend to be stupid and not ask any questions or do any research or try to understand anything. I just have to sit here and cover my head, because that was the thing. That was part of our list of crazy things that women had to do. Men didn't have these rules, but women had to cover their hair. They couldn't wear jewelry. There was no tattoos, no makeup, no hair dye, no painting nails, no dancing, no clapping. All these things were sinful.
Hold on, no dancing, no clapping. Didn't God talk about didn't it talk about David dancing before the Lord and God being pleased with it? That he danced and he sang and he played music and he praised in front of in front of God, and God was pleased with him for this act.
Yeah, and I actually brought that up at one point where somebody, is really getting into prayer, speaking tongues, screaming, in the middle of church, and they're clapping, and jumping in place. And you had so many people that got angry with this person. And so half the church was like, oh, but this was, it was a reaction because of the Holy Spirit. It was a reaction because God, poured out the Holy Spirit. They couldn't control themselves. But then you had the other people that were like, they're just putting on a show. They were just doing this, just to be looked at, just to have the attention, just to be respected or to be seen as better than everybody else.
Oh
I'm just
man,
like, none of you guys can even get along with each other to even make
that's
sense
funny
of
because
what
like in
your
the
rules
churches,
are.
I went to, it was almost expected for someone to do that kind of stuff. That if someone didn't do that on a Sunday, the Holy Spirit didn't show up.
Yeah, we had speaking in tongues, and if somebody would start speaking in tongues, then everybody else, because it always happened coincidentally when everybody was in prayer, and then there'd be the one person that starts speaking in tongues and would start talking louder than everybody.
Yeah,
they would bounce between speaking in prayer and saying their message in Romanian. And then,
now see, in the churches I was in, they done it a little bit different. What it would be is someone would start speaking in tongues, and it was like you said, always when everyone was always engaged in prayer, someone would start speaking in tongues louder than everyone else, where everyone in the church could hear them, and then someone else would interpret it.
Oh, okay.
And like, there's a lot of times I remember as a kid sitting there going, did they plan this shit? Because it always seems that when it's that guy, it's always that person that interprets, and when it's that guy, it's always that person, and then and it's just like, I'm pretty sure these people are fucking putting this shit on. Like, this isn't like, like, this is like some fucking, just putting on a fucking circus act. This is really what it felt like. And
Ken Crawford in the comments, let's not talk about David's sins.
Oh god, yeah.
You can't question anything.
David's sins are is a long and distinguished list, and he was supposed to be one of the greatest kings. Yeah. And it's like, okay, David with all of his craziness, but God forbid we question something simple, or we do something that the Bible talked about how it pleased God. But it's not pleasing to God if it's a woman that does it, because, well, and let's for a second, let's go back to this whole thing of original sin. Because like, I've really been thinking about this for a while, and someone brought up a really good point on this. And it might have been you. You might have brought this up on one of your videos. I don't know. Everyone wants to lay all the shit on Eve, all the shit on woman for eating the apple of the tree of good and evil, right? Gaining that knowledge. Okay. When Adam was given the commandment not to eat of that tree, if I believe right, if I remember everything right in timing, Eve wasn't even created yet. Eve wasn't even in existence yet. So she had no knowledge that that tree was off limits unless Adam had told her.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I'd have to go back and look, but I imagine it's going to be different in different translations too.
Well, yeah, it's going to be, whoever translated it whatever way they wanted to play out, because let's be honest, that's how a lot of this goes.
Yeah.
But but someone brought up the whole point that it was Lilith that was there when that command was given. And then she left, and then Eve was created, and Eve, there's no place in there it talks that Eve was ever given that commandment not to eat of that tree, and that Adam willingly eating of it after Eve and knowing is where the original sin actually took place. That Eve wasn't the original sin, it was Adam willingly knowing eating of it.
Yeah.
But they can't do that, because then that makes man bad.
Yeah. And it makes you question more of the Bible, and they don't want you having any inkling of a question to have to, go look for something specific. You just need to be force-fed what they give you.
Yeah. It's like, I saw something the other day I thought was funny. It said, the part in the Bible about the talking snakes is literal, but the part about forgiving debts after 7 years, that's not real.
The further I get away from all of it, and whenever I look back, which I don't do very often, it's funny because my husband, he's an atheist, and he spends so much of his time going down, the rabbit holes of Bible verses and Bible stories. And I'm at a point where I have this wonderful gift where I can forget things. And at this point, I'm pretty sure I've forgotten most of the faces of people from my old church. So I might have even walked past them, and it doesn't register that, I've walked past them.
Mm-hmm.
But I have just kind of left all the stories, all the biblical stuff behind me. Like, when I'm having a conversation, of course, I can still access that information. But in general, I just push it away and I don't think about it anymore. And the more I look back at old stories, when I'm having conversations about this, I'm just like, how do like my brothers and my parents hear these stories and take them literally? It's like, how are you guys hearing this and you're not just like, are we crazy? Are we the crazy people? And I'm just, there's such a bubble that they have to put around themselves to be able to function as a Christian in today's world. There has to be. You have to completely disassociate from reality to be able to hear those stories and be like, yeah, this is true. This is the Bible. This is our truth. This is what's going to happen. These are the rules. This is what our future, as Christians is going to, have for us. And I just sit there and I'm like, I cannot put myself in a place mentally or emotionally to be like, maybe they're right. Maybe it is the truth. It's like, it's too much now. It makes too much sense to see the manipulation of it. Makes too much sense now to fall for it anymore.
Well, one of the problems for me is in Christianity, if you look at Old Testament Christianity, like the Old Testament, which isn't even Christianity, it's mm-hmm. It's Hebrew, it's all Hebrew law and Aramaic or Abrahamic law and stuff. And then the New Testament, they're like total complete different gods.
Mm-hmm.
Like the aspect of God, like Old Testament God was like brutal, vile, mean, like mm-hmm. very vengeful, very wrathful, very like, you pissed me off and you betrayed my people, so I'm going mm-hmm. to commit genocide and we're going to go into the land of Canaan and kill every Canaanite. Screw y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, hold on. This is not the loving, caring, omnipotent God that they try to talk about in church and in the New mm-hmm. Testament. Because this is a God of war. This is a God of wrath. This is a God of destruction. This is,
Yeah.
And, and it gets funny because when you look at the Old Testament, they have all these different names for God. Like, they have all the different aspects of the Jehovah. They have all the mm-hmm. different aspects of the Elohim. And they talk about all these different things, but they all try to say that it's all the same God.
Yeah.
And to me, it starts to look very much like some more almost like a pantheon versus mm-hmm. A monotheistic type belief system where there's multiple versions of whoever or whatever the supreme being that you're talking about is, because these mm-hmm. aren't all the same person, or if they are the most fucked up individual in existence. Bipolar doesn't even start to touch it. Like, one minute it's like, hey, we love everyone. Next minute, flood. Screw it all. Everything's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the whole aspect of God is supposed to know everything that's happening, and know everything that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if God knew everything that was going to happen, why would he let things happen to destroy his whole creation.
Yeah. And
But
why does, God having to do things, for his own reasoning have to be painful for the
yeah,
people that he loves?
yeah. To me,
I
that's to me that's like the equivalent of a kid with a magnifying glass on the ants. You
mhm.
know, on a sunny day, it's like, oh well, this is God doing God's will, but it's going to be painful for these ants.
Yeah, there's all those stories of like I just shared like a meme about one of these recently where it's like a house burned down with a woman in it and she died, but the Bible was left untouched. There's no burn marks on it, and with stuff like that, there was always these stories in church, and I would ask, I'd be like, well, why wouldn't God save the person too, instead of just the Bible? And they'd be like, oh, well, God wanted, God was calling them home. I'm like, couldn't he call them home like in their sleep or something?
Yeah,
Couldn't
why does
he
he
do
have to
something that
burn them
wasn't
alive?
so
Jesus
so
Christ
suffering
Almighty!
and
Like,
painful?
couldn't he been
Where's the
like, all right, you're
loveliness?
going to sleep, you're not going to wake up, you're coming home. Good, come on,
Hmm.
let's do this. Doesn't. Yeah, no. Like, I don't know.
It's just you have to work mentally and emotionally to try to make it make sense, and it doesn't. So you have to come to a point where you're just accepting whatever it is that people say for the sake of it. But
Yeah, it gets.
I'm glad I'm out.
Me too. And it's so funny because I would get. And like, okay, don't get me wrong. I love my mom. Loved my mom. She passed away in 2020. A couple months before she passed away, she was sitting out the house and she's like, Joshua, I don't understand why you just haven't become the man of God that you were supposed to be. And started in on this. And I'm like, Mom, I have. It's just not the way that you wanted me to be.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I've become exactly who I'm supposed to be. It's just not your idea of what I'm supposed to be. You don't like the path I took because it's not the path you wanted me to take.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it's any less my path. It's just not the one that you wanted me to take. It doesn't look the way you wanted it to look.
Yeah, I still get the texts from family being like, repent, turn back, God can still save your soul. And I recently just, had enough and lashed back with some kind of, cold, well, what I got it was a video of Billy Graham preaching about, your soul and repentance and what you have to do to, whatever, say to be redeemed. And I wrote back and I was like, well, lucky for me, he's dead. I don't got to listen to him anymore. And I got back in Romanian, like, God have mercy on your soul or something. And I'm like, I understand God more than I have ever understood God. I understand the Christian God. I know what the reality of God, nature, universe is. I'm like, I understand. I am more connected to the reality of this than I have ever been in my entire life. You don't understand it because you are only connected to the creation that they've come up with. And I'm like, and if that's what you guys want to be walking, that's fine, but leave me alone. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going in life. I have no fear about my life. I have no fear about death. I could be struck right now with lightning and I have no fear about like where I'm going to go or what I'm going to experience on the other side. Like all that is gone. I have come to terms, come full circle to who I am and who I'm going to continue to work to become. Right. And it's people, coming from a cult, they cannot wrap their mind around the idea. They just, the devil's got her. That's all they see when they see me is the devil's got me. The world has me and I'm lost now. Mm-hmm. Whatever. You guys keep telling your stories. I'm gonna go over here.
And I keep getting I got similar stuff, growing up, and it's the church is so crazy with the way it is in the communities that it creates and the mentality of the individual doesn't matter in the church.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes this like weird collective organism, and if you are not always serving that organism at some way, shape, or form,
Mm-hmm.
then you're obviously a parasite and you need to go.
Yeah.
And here's the funniest thing that I've heard in the church is, you can't be here. You're not what a Christian's supposed to be. You're not acting
Mm-hmm.
like a Christian. You're not behaving like a Christian. And I'm just like, oh, I thought church was for those that needed Jesus, not for Christians, or not, for those
Yeah.
who are like so pious and righteous and holy and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a place now for everybody to show off and to try to look better than the next person, or to meet some kind of
it really is
standard, at least in the Romanian churches.
Well, a lot of times, even like here in this area, a lot of the churches are that whole it's like a social thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a social class. It's like showing up at church and making sure everyone sees that you're there on Sunday, and
Yeah.
and the whole ordeal. But I imagine probably even within the Romanian church, because it's been like this in every church I've went to, it's a do as I say, not as I do. Once it gets behind closed doors or out of the public face, that whole idea and mentality is usually right out the window, right out the door.
Oh, yeah.
And it's whatever fits and suits that person at that point in time. But then the minute they're back around one of those church people, oh man, that mask and that behavior and everything is back on, because you can't appear to be
Suddenly
anything
they're
but
the most Christians ever.
Right. Yep. And see, that's the biggest, I think that's probably what really drove me out of the church, was the hypocrisy. Because even in my early 20s, I had went back and tried to do the whole thing. I went and tried to become Tiff. Hi, Tiff. If you feel up to it, I know you're not feeling well. You can always jump in on video with us. I sent you the link. But I know you might not be feeling well.
We have her spot saved too on the screen.
Yeah.
Happy
yes.
birthday.
Oh, yes, it's Tiffany's birthday today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. I got to talk to her later. I sent her a little meme, or not a meme, Marco Polo earlier singing her happy birthday. But man, I don't even remember what I was talking about. I saw Tiff and got excited.
Yeah, we got your spot on the screen. We saved it for you.
Yep, I will gladly scoot over if you want to join. I can't even remember what I was talking about.
The reputation,
it was that do as I say, not as I do kind of mentality stuff,
Yeah.
Where it's and that's the way it was, is whatever it was, whenever you was around other people that was of the church, you had to act and behave and maintain a certain level, a certain standard, a certain way, and if you didn't doing that, it just, you were the problem, you were the wrong, you were the bad one. Even if you was being forced to conform into things that weren't healthy for you, it was, if you didn't become what the church said you needed to become, you was the problem.
Yeah.
Oh,
when I was told I needed to be medicated.
I know where I was talking about. I was talking about when I was in my early 20s and I was with the church still. I went back into the church trying to do things, trying to appease my family. It's literally what I was trying to do. I was trying to appease my family. And so like, okay, well, I'm going to go into church and I'm going to do this whole thing. And I got into working in the ministry in the church, and I was working as a youth leader, as an associate youth pastor at a church. I was, working a full-time 40-hour a week job. I was going out to the church multiple days a week. Every time there was a service, we going out for special youth group services. I was driving the church van, going and picking kids up before services and taking them home after services. And so like I'm putting in like easily, 14-hour days.
Yeah.
By the time I would leave for work, go do all this stuff, leave work, I would literally leave work, have a change of clothes, drive out to the church, change clothes, and then start doing everything out there. And I done this for quite some time, got burned out, ended up leaving the church. Just didn't show up. Just decided not to show up. It took 6 months before anyone in that church reached out and said something to me.
Yeah.
And it happened to be because I bumped into one of them in a store and they asked me, "Oh, hey, what was going on?" And the thing is, I was part of their leadership team and I just walked away, and not a single person in that church, not one of their elders, not one of their leaders, not one person whatsoever reached out and said, "Hey, what's going on?" It's because they already had someone else to fill that role.
Yeah.
When I stepped out, they were like, "Oh, okay, well, we got someone else. We don't need him anymore."
Oh yeah, they replaced me real quick, but not before they came to my house and broke in and slashed my tires, and had people following me around, taking pictures of me as I'm grocery shopping to send around and make sure that everybody knew where I was. Having people come under secret names to leave bad reviews under any business that I was running to make sure that I couldn't be successful in whatever it is that I was trying to do. It got to the point that I literally had to contact them and be like, "Look, I am..." At that point, I was a published author. I had a big following for my books. And I was like, I have access to the media. I'm like, if you don't want me to take down your church right now, then get everybody off my back. Tell everybody to leave me alone. I'm not out here. I didn't leave the church just to, to go and, ruin people's lives, to go and mess up people's reputations. I'm like, I had no interest. All I wanted was to have my own life, to be me and be able to live my life and embrace the things that I find important to me. To, raise my kids in a safe environment where, they could talk to me, they could open up, and, we can discuss things without fear attached. And, but, you couldn't do that with that church. Everybody had to be involved. Everybody had to be, in control in some way. But no, they tried to ruin everything in my life so that I couldn't function, so that I would have to come crawling back to them for some kind of support. And I'm like, I had to threaten that I would go with the truth of what it is of how they're running their church, which I imagine they've probably fixed now, so that can't be a, future threat for them. But there's all sorts of proof of things of, how they function, how they got churches started, the things that they're doing kind of behind the scenes, that are not, the most, I don't even want to say that word. I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble, but just things going on that I could have them shut down if I really wanted to.
Right. Like, things aren't on the up and up with some of the ways that they're doing stuff.
Yeah. And I'm like, but that wasn't my point in leaving. I wasn't leaving with some sort of, need for revenge or something, but so many of them, when they found out that when I was just talking about divorce, I had random people showing up at my door being like, we had to see if you were still here. We had to make sure that, you were sane. We're hearing things about you being insane or something, you being a crazy person. We wanted to see you for ourselves to make sure, that we're not just hearing things. And I'm like, everybody's showing up now, but nobody cares when I go and ask for help, when I go and actually, they're like, hey, there's a problem. I am literally dying right now. This is my situation. How can I, have some kind of support? What can, what can I do, differently to fix my life, to fix my marriage, to fix, everything we have going on? And nobody had answers. It was just do A, B, and C. And if you don't, then, if you die, you die. I'm like, well, I'm not, that's not an option. So.
Yeah, and it's so messed up because it's the way the church is with their mentality and that idea that if you don't serve the church, if you're not a benefit to the church, then it's almost like if you're not with them, you're against them, you're an enemy,
Mhm.
and they need to align against you.
Yeah.
And it's not really that way. And one of the things that always cracks me up is in the Bible, and I'm pretty sure it was Jesus that said, "Go on all men." Shoot, I'm trying to remember the wording of it right. Tiff is here. Hold on, we got to put Tiff on the right side, or on her
I was
proper side.
listening to Diana, and it sounds like you stood up for ethics and you stood up for morals. And then they ran a smear campaign against you with trying to make you sound insane, questioning if you're okay. That's a smear campaign.
Yeah, that's the word I was leaving out, but that's 100% what it was.
I was like, I gotta say it, man, because they triangulated you and they targeted you to threaten you, to keep you quiet, maybe, and then also to discredit. That's what they do.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
it's total bullshit.
They don't want to see any woman having any kind of, authority, any kind of like authority over herself. Not even like I wasn't trying to go and have authority over people. I wasn't going and trying to control anybody's life or to go ruin people. I didn't even go after my own ex-husband. I'm like, just, you live your life. Like I'm going to live my life. Like I don't even need, like, I didn't even go after child support or anything. I was like, give the money to the kids, pay everything that the kids need with school, with health, with whatever. I'm going to go get my own job. I'm going to build up a life for myself and be me. And they were not. They were not
God, no! That's dangerous shit right there. You're an independent, free-thinking woman. You're dangerous in the church.
And was he a part of that congregation?
Yes.
Him? Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my uncle, I was saying before, my uncle's the head of the Romanian Pentecostal Union of America and Canada, and he was the big kahuna. He's the huge.
I tell you what, Tiffany missed out on all that. I need to run to the restroom real quick. Why don't you and Tiff catch up on some of this stuff?
I know a little bit because I've been following Diana. I'm secretly like one of your number one fans. I've been following your rooms and Ravens.
And I'll be right back while you two kind of have your little
like little fangirl moment. Like I love her content, and I love the fact that you speak out so openly because you're giving a voice to so many people that have experienced this very similar kind of situations that you've experienced. So you're very inspirational, and it's one of those things. Like I watch your stuff and I'm like, dude, like that. There was one where you're like standing at the door and it was like about to rain and there's a thunderstorm, and I was like, yes, to get through the storm. And like your family's like on the couch, and you're like, when you're the only pagan in the house, and I'm like, girl, I'm like right there. I'm like out standing in the storm. People looking at me like I'm crazy. But it's like that point to where living in denial of who we really are. Living in denial of our true self on this path gets so uncomfortable that we literally can't tolerate it anymore. And that's where like that big shift happens, or that big awakening, or whatever you want to call it, where we're going to live our truth. And like with your family, you had people head up like in some serious stuff there. So you had a lot of expectations from the start.
Oh yeah, and the whole like the story that they tell themselves too is just so emotionally strong for them, because my parents they came from Romania. At the time, there was it was a communist country, and so had escaped literally with their lives. Like my mom was pregnant with me 8 months when they first started, getting out. Crawling on their hands and knees in dark fields in the middle of the night where they would have been shot on sight. Like it was dangerous, and they had my 4-year-old, or my brother who was 4-year-old at the time, crawling behind them on this trip. It was this big emotional, scary situation that they went through to get to America. And so I was the first girl that was born and sort of given, to dedicated to God and the church, when they got to America in Arizona. And so it's ironic that I'm over here, like everything that I'm building up right now is to help me and my husband get out of America to get to somewhere that is meaningful and emotionally connecting to us. Like I have I don't know if you're familiar with the term hiraith. It's like, or as Americans, Hurayeth is how some people say it. Okay. But it's like a feeling of homesickness for somewhere you've never been. It could be for a person you've never met, but like you just feel this instant connection or something. But it's this feeling that I've had for Celtic, land, music, food, culture since I was
roots. Roots.
Well, the ruins are Norse, really.
No,
so,
roots.
Oh, roots. Oh,
your roots. You're going back to your genetic roots. You're tapping into that deep genetic line, and that's where you get that call.
Thinking, but I'm Romanian and Ukrainian, so we're Slavic. We're coming from the Slavic background of things, but there's still, there's still the connections there anyways. But that's where I do a lot of past life work. Yeah, I do a lot of past life stuff. So
it could be soul, girlfriend.
I imagine it's a soul connection.
I gotta say,
if it's not blood, it's soul.
I saw your video the other day, Diana, about wanting to work with raven bones and reading raven bones, and then realizing they're illegal to work with because they're considered a bird of prey in the United States. They're considered, and you can't own any body parts of a bird of prey in the United States.
Even if they're roadkill, you have to turn them in or leave them alone.
Yeah, if they're if a natural kill or anything, you have to turn them over. The reason why is so
to protect them,
right? So people aren't illegally hunting them and
hunting them for their talons.
Well, the talons, the feathers, the bones.
That's to protect them. That makes sense.
Everything.
I did not know though, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a dream about raven bones, and I woke up and I was like, man, like maybe this is something I need to do, because I pay attention to my dreams. Like I have lived according to my dreams since I was a kid, and so when I had this dream, I was like, oh my gosh, was that like a past life thing? Was that something is this some kind of calling that I have? Because I had a similar situation with runes when I first started with runes, and I went to look into it, and it's like, everything's illegal. Can't do it. I'm like, God dang it. We need to get to Scotland faster. We got to get out of here.
Scotland, girl. I've always wanted to go.
Oh, we've been trying to go, especially for the last 4 years, but we've had a series of family emergencies, and each family emergency being something that you can't be like, oh, well, we're just going to go anyway. The problem's going to stay there. It's like, it wasn't that kind of family emergency. It was, hands-on situations we had to take care of, and we're still just trying to build up to go. And last week I was I had it wasn't even a week ago, it was just a few days ago, I messaged my best friend Emily from childhood. She's been to Scotland I don't know how many times, and I messaged her and I was like, tell me, where do you get tickets? Where do you stay? What are the steps that you take to go? I'm like, I have to at least pretend that I'm going next week just for my sanity. I'm like, the homesickness, the yearning to get to go is so strong these last few days. I'm like, I could just sit here and just cry and be like, I just want to go to Scotland.
I straight up see someone about to stow away on a cargo ship.
I remember something about Diana talking about having a past life memory download hit her in a lucid dream state, but it was her living this life as herself and another woman and family, and then you woke up as yourself, and it was like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what time period was she in? I'm curious. I didn't get to ask you.
That was still pretty modern. So it wasn't even 1800s or 1600s. It was still pretty modern. And I remember a birthday from when I was in third grade or something. I remember places that we went to. I remember like the faces of who were my parents. And I remembered, you know, when I first woke up, I remembered the names of my kids and my husband. And they started like seeping away, and I was like trying to like grasp them, and I was crying so hard. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And I was looking around, and I was more focused on how I had just died. And I was like, I just died. Like, are my kids going to be okay? How are they going to handle this?
Exactly.
How do I get to them? And then I was like, slowly, like, it was almost like while that was going away, it was like the memories of this life was coming in, like replacing everything. And I'm like, no. And I was just on the floor in this mess, just crying. Like, I don't know what to do. There was nothing to do. I was a 14-year-old. Like, I had just come home from school, and I remember walking home from school and dropping my bag and, you know, laying on the floor. It was Arizona. Like, the floor was the coldest place to just drop and, you know, to fall asleep after walking, you know, a mile, you know,
and it just hit you
home in the middle of, and it was awful. And that was, I still don't know if that was like a past life, if that was, I have my theories of past life and, you know, experiences, but this almost seemed like, I don't know, like, I don't know how I feel about the dimensional stuff necessarily right now.
Multi-dimensional. It could have been a multi-dimensional you, and you tapped into that, and then I understand that.
Yeah,
I wholeheartedly I wholeheartedly believe we have dimensional mergers that happen, and what that might have been is where one dimension was merging with this one, and whichever of the two dimensions is the quote unquote dominant dimension
at that time
is what takes precedence, and that's where the memories, the feelings. But then you have all those weird, like, ghost, like, I call them almost like a ghost feeling, like a ghost emotion or a ghost memory.
I get those deja vus where I'm like, what in the frick? Like,
like something's there, but it's like, what in the hell?
Oh, like that experience of where it was like you saw something not of this realm, and it saw you see it, and it was like,
not so much that, which, you know, I've had that. I've talked to you about that recently. No, I'm talking so much like it's like that vague memory that there was something else that existed, but it's gone, but it's just, it kind of lingers, but it's not really there. Do you get it? Like,
I get it. That veil of forgetfulness too has to come down because our human mind can't quite compartmentalize all of that. And so it's like a shutdown almost to focus in on this life, because when we connect to the others, like Josh said, it's almost like you're tapping in on a frequency, or like you're tuning in, and you get like these feelings and emotions, and you're like, whoa, this isn't me. And I've had it where it was like those pivotal moments in my life, like life-changing. I knew my life would never be the freaking same moments. Had a few of those. And I know I have tapped into a me that was on that other timeline if I had made the different choice at that crossroads. A few times and then I was like, whoa, and I would kind of like you wake up and I'm like, what is going on?
I had this dream just a few years ago where it was so vivid. It was like, it was all over the news that there was an asteroid coming and it was going to hit the Earth, and there was nothing we could do. There was no moving it off course or anything. Like, we were all going to get hit and that was it. But it was so like nobody said anything until you could actually see it in the sky, and it was coming so fast. Like, nobody really had time to you know, really grasp what was happening. And I walked outside and I was like, I can't believe this is going to happen. And I walked outside and I looked at the sky, and I could still just see it like coming towards the Earth. Like, it was so big at that point, and you could feel the heat coming off of it. And it hit the Earth. And I remember seeing all the Earth, like all the dirt debris flying up and everything just kind of exploding.
Girl, you were not the only one.
Suddenly, like, as I was like closing my eyes, like, oh my God, when I opened my eyes, it was like I was suddenly like I was in the air, and I was doing this thing like a falling feather, And I looked around me and there was all these other people, just like souls of people. And all of us were looking at each other like, oh my God, what just happened? And suddenly we're all back down on the earth again and we're just living our lives again. And I was looking around like, what just happened? Like, wait, what? Like, was that real?
Was that a shift? Was it a prophetic vision? I know prophetic visions can be like that.
Yeah. And then it was like there was some other situation where it was just a few months ago. I was putting all over the internet. I was like, what was this stuff called? It's like Braunschweiger, is that what it's called? It's some kind of food. But it had a different name before. And I'm like, I know the label. It was an Oscar Mayer label, but it was a different name on there. And around that time when I realized like I couldn't find it anymore, I texted my mom, I texted my brothers. Yeah. And I was like, what was this called? Like, this is not this, it looks like this, but that's not what it's called. Like, what was this called? And everybody's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, how could you not know? And just a few months before that experience, I was driving, I don't know where I was driving, but I know I was making a turn and I looked and a car came and hit me. And then suddenly I blinked and it wasn't there anymore. And I was still sitting there in the car and I was like, did that just hit me? And what just happened?
That's how I found your videos. That's your first video I ever saw. I think you were talking about that experience. Did you talk about that on TikTok?
Yeah, I believe I don't even know where that one is.
Everyone was like, it was a long time ago. And everyone was like responding with it. And they were like, oh yeah. I mean, they were, and I was like, this is, some of us are shifting or we are skipping reality or I mean, there's time, what is it, jumping? There's something happening.
Yeah, something is, there's too many moving pieces now. It's almost like as if the world was a puzzle and all the pieces have separated and it's like little gaps in between each piece now. And you can
I have it figured out.
I swear it's CERN.
I have it figured out. Diana is actually Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap.
I love it. Oh my God, are you old enough to know Quantum Leap, Diana?
I haven't seen it.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I'm typing this in.
They done a newer version. They done a newer version of Quantum Leap.
The movie.
No, they done a new TV show. They done a newer one with it's got one of the guys from Harold and Kumar plays the Scott Bakula role. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to look into this.
I've seen the.
I figured you was a sci-fi fan. I
have not watched it.
Fan, Diana.
I'm more of a fantasy fan. But I'll watch sci-fi too. That's my next, but.
Okay, so the whole Scott Bakula Quantum Leap thing is, it starts off as this this experiment thing where he's trying to go back and they're trying to leap back in time to fix certain things that have went wrong. Well, what ends up happening is he ends up getting sent back into other people's bodies. He inhabits other people's bodies, and he's got to fix what went wrong in that person
that
was
timeline from their
body, and then once he fixed what's went wrong there, he jumps and shifts into the next person to fix things, and it's just this ongoing thing where he just jumps through.
It's fascinating, the storyline and the complications.
And it does kind of come out as that, like, he gets that kind of confused every time he leaves. He wakes up in a new body and he's just like, okay, where the hell am I and what the hell is this and what's going on?
But it's like you have to, and I wonder, does he have access to their memories or no? I've never known that. Because
no, because that's the whole part of the guy that helps him out, Ziggy. That, remember, he would come in and tell him everything.
That's it. I remember.
Yeah, it's a great series.
I gotta look into this.
But I would suggest watching the original with Scott Bakula because I think it was so much better than, like, the newer one I've watched a few episodes of. It's not bad, but it's actually a continuation on it because it continues. What they're doing is trying to figure out what ended up happening to Scott Bakula's character. And so it's a continuation of, so the new Quantum Leap is just, it's like a sequel to the original.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, but watch the original. It's really
the
good.
original's so old school. It's great.
But the other thing that like I get into that is similar was the TV show Sliders is the other one.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Sliders. That's kind of what, and it's almost what it feels like sometimes. It's like, like someone said something earlier about dream walking, and I experience dream walking all the time. And it's like, and I've experienced dream walking with other people connecting psychically. And then I wake up and they wake up and we're like messaging at each other like, hey, did you just pull me out of a nightmare? Like Susan does it with me all the time. And she'll message me and say, hey, wake up. You're in a nightmare,
Oh,
and it's that a dream walker thing. And then I told Josh before, sometimes I'm different people. I'm not me. Like I've been all different kinds of people inside my dreams, and like I'm playing, like I'm their character or something. But then I'm also have like an omniscient view too, and it's like switching back and forth.
Yeah, that's how mine generally are.
Kind of above seeing it and then experiencing it and then seeing it, and it's always very
that's
vivid.
like at the same time.
And at the same time, like multi-dimensionally connecting that way. And I'm wondering if we're kind of doing that in this existence and walking life and tapping into that sometimes, and that's where it's like that etheric or what people would call the 4D, whatever you want to call it. But we're slipping into that and then we're popping back. So like your meteor one, that could be you tapping into Akashic, like possibilities of potentialities.
Yeah.
Did it feel like something like that was existing at the present moment or something future? Or
it was something that felt present at the time. Like I was just like, wow, like when I woke up, I just kind of sat there with it and I was like, was that, like, did I just shift into a new timeline now? And that's why when, it was kind of similar with the car situation when like I looked over and it hit me and then suddenly I wasn't hit. And I was sitting there thinking like, wait, did I just shift again? Like, how often do we shift? And then it was like a few weeks later when that thing happened with the food, where I couldn't remember what the food was called. And I was like, I must have died. I must have died at 4:32
a.m. And you popped over.
And ever since then, I'm just like, I don't even know. I'm like, what is there even any reason to be stressed about anything anymore? Like, is this just what's going to happen every time I die? I'm just going to pop into another body. Like,
mine's a little bit different. I've had two full near deaths where I've legitimately died, and I had one. My last one was in December, and I know Josh felt me because he was like holding space for me, and my experience is golden light. I call it's feminine goddess to me, like a feminine Holy Spirit, whatever you want to, divine feminine, and just very loving. It's just all around pure unconditional love. Like it feels like home. And I have the angels with me, but everything's light. And this last time I was shown basically like a rainbow bridge kind of thing. And I was like standing at this rainbow light, and the presence doesn't speak. It just like downloads into me. It's not telepathic. It's a feeling, a knowing, everything all at once.
Claircognizance.
It's very claircognizant. And she's like, you can go home now. You've done enough. Because the last time I was told not to try that again, that I had to go back to my roots, and it wasn't my time. I had too much to do, and I was smacked, and it was a command. And I did I went back to my roots. This time I was told, you've done enough. You can cross over, or you can choose to stay. And I hesitated. And I know Josh felt me. Because whenever I talked to him, he said, you hesitated there for a minute.
I told her, I said, I thought we was going to lose you. Like, I seriously did. I thought we was going to lose you.
I had a blood clot from my port that moved into my atria of my heart.
Oh,
and
wow.
they had to go in through my femoral with this like cool thing to suck it out, and broke in half. And I flatlined and 3/4 of an inch. I mean, and it was a miracle my cardiologist even found it. I wasn't in there for that. I was in there because I had congestive heart stuff. And so she was looking at that, and then she sees this big old clot, attached to my port moving, and she was like, oh shit, she's about to stroke. And they rushed me into a hospital, and boom, 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 boom. But it was a close call. But it was like, for me, it was that, I don't know, coming back, it took me a while to really, I'm still kind of integrating. Like, I feel like, well, I have more spiritual experiences now. Like, I'm more tapped into the liminal or to spirit. And so it's like, I'm that mediumship aspect is a lot stronger now, I guess. So maybe that's also because I know the first time when I came back, I was going through a dark night, and it was my full-blown awakening and like Kundalini crap. And then that one was where I got sent home to my parents to like help like catch me. So I would be okay. But like with y'all, like with you, Diana, like you've always been more awakened. You've always been more aware. You're very much an empath, right?
Yeah.
But like, did your awakening kind of happen in steps? Mine like would hit me, and I would try to like stay. I was a theater teacher. I was, in the system.
I could totally see that.
But then I developed lupus, and I had an awakening, and all these things hit me. And it was like I was being pushed to be spiritual. Like, and the more I resisted, the more I got pushed.
Oh, yeah. I had my first awakening when I was 14. And that was when I first, it was sort of this sudden, like you said, just this sudden knowing. It was, I don't even remember what was happening or when it happened, because I spent so much alone time. I was always just in my room, and I would light, like I had 12 candles, and I would light all 12 of them. I had Enya playing, and I would lay there in my bed and I would just stare at my ceiling, and I would just like, I don't even know how to explain. Like, I just would go in. I would go in.
Yes.
Like,
I know.
Go in.
I did it too.
And I would just suddenly like, I realized like in high school, I just knew things suddenly. And, I would be sitting there in like I remember being in my biology class. My teacher was, talking about things, and he would be saying something, and I would add the final word, and he'd be like, did you take this already? And I'm like, I just knew it. I didn't know how I knew it. It was just there. And, but I was having spiritual experiences. I started at 7 years old. I started having extremely symbolic dreams, and I was very aware of what the dream was meaning, and what I was being left with, basically what the after message was. And I remember this dream, this recurring nightmare that I had when I was 7. And I remember, I'll just tell you what it was, because at the time I was in the Christian church, the Romanian Pentecostal. And so everything was Christian. Every manifestation of every thought was always in a Christian light, And I had this dream recurring when I was little, that I was standing in what we would call hell. And I was standing on this like lava rock, and I would have, Satan in front of me, and I couldn't see his face. He had a hood pulled over his eyes. You could see his nose and his mouth is moving, but I couldn't hear him. And I'd be like trying to listen, like, what are you saying? And on each side of him, there was like a demon, or what I would consider was a demon back then. I don't believe in demons now, but they were the manifestation of what I would have believed was a demon. And that I was sitting there like, thinking, well, I can't hear him. Like, I can't, is he saying something to me? Is there somebody like behind me? Like, what's happening? And then he would like turn around and go away, and the two demons would come and stand next to me. And then I would wake up, and I would be all freaked out. Like, they're still with me. They didn't leave me. And so I was like 7, and I'm like, but I can't see them, but they're still here. They're still here. And as I got older,
that's dramatic.
I would, and it was like I would ask for. I brought this up with my parents, when I was like 12, and this is when I kind of went to the church, and they're like, she's having dreams, and she's conversing with the devil, and I was like, it ruined my friendships. It ruined any chance for me to make connections, in church and everything. But as I got older, like when I was, I remember this time when I was like 13, I went to the mall with my friends, and we went into this place. It was called the Sphinx. And it was like one of those places that was, all like, they had like a section with like ancient Egypt, and they had a section with like all the Wiccan stuff, and they had a section with all the divination or whatever.
Yeah.
And we walked in there one Saturday, and we didn't know there was a lady doing tarot readings like in the shop,
You were like, my people.
Well, I didn't even see her. She came up to me like as soon as we walked in, and it was 3 of us, and she came right in front of me. She's like, "Can I do a reading on you?" She's like, "You don't even have to pay." She's like, "There's something with you, and I need to see what's gonna come out." And I was like 13. I was like, "Okay," and I was so excited, like,
yeah,
awesome. And I remember the deck that she used, and this card that she pulled out was a girl that looked just like me. And she's like, "Are you from overseas?" And I'm like, "Not necessarily. My parents, are immigrants. They immigrated, and then I was born like here the day after." And she's like, "Your entire life is going to revolve around getting across the sea." And I'm like over here like Scotland every day. Like I sit here on Google Earth just walking the streets of Scotland just to be like, just to delve in. And I didn't remember that until just a few years ago. I like came back in like a flashback, and I was like, "Holy crap, that was so right." But she had said at the time that I had 2 women that were walking with me, and they looked like me. They were like an older version and a younger version. And then as I got, a few years later down the line, I met somebody else who just came up to me and is like, I'm a medium, told me about her job and stuff. She's like, "You have 3 women with you. One is older, one is like middle-aged like you, and one is younger." Like,
oh my God, maiden mother crone.
And I was like, okay. And then the 3rd time, somebody else came and said the same thing. And they all said the same thing. That one of them would have, like, they all had red hair. I used to be a natural ginger. Now I'm like gray, brown, and I'm not dyeing my hair anymore. But they all said they were all redhead, and they all had the braid over the shoulder the way I always did. And so as I got older, I was like, as a kid, I must have been sensing this presence of whatever, this, energy is around me. And because I was in that bubble of Christianity, that I didn't have any access to the outside, it was scary to me, and I immediately took it as it was demonic. And so they manifested into these demons. But the thing is that I was never afraid of these demons, really. I would see them as demons, growing up, and I would have all these experiences. And the way that they had manifested changed when I finally started detaching from the belief in Christianity. And I still had these same experiences spiritually, but they start manifesting themselves in different ways. So I, had experiences with Jesus Christ. I had experiences with the God of the Bible, where it led me down certain paths in my life. And then as I got away, even with the runes, I started having dreams of Odin. I had dreams of, Thor. I had dreams of, experiences. I had experiences with, the Green Man, with Sir Nuno.
Nice.
When I was into, the Celtic stuff. I had this attachment to Anubis when I was younger. And it was all every time I would have some sort of spiritual.
A different guidance, a different archetype.
Yeah, and it would change, and that's what I teach people about with archetypes. Is you're not going to have one deity.
And it's really funny when you get to the runes that Odin's who came to you, because Odin's who brought us the runes. That's the story. Is the runic language came because Odin went seeking the knowledge of the runes.
Yeah.
And didn't he hang upside down for so many days?
Not upside down. He hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree.
And he lost his eye?
He plucked out his eye as part of the sacrifice to gain the knowledge of the runes.
Yeah. And he hung for 9 days and 9 nights.
Yeah, 9 days, 9 nights. And during the whole time, Hunan and Munin whispered into his ears why he hung.
Nice. I'm kind of similar with the archetype, with the different deity aspects and how they present to us at different times of our lives. Carl Jung really got into a lot of that within his spirituality and studies. My master's work is in counseling psych, and I focus on Carl Jung, and it's learning the anima and the animus aspects of us too, getting to those aspects is part of that healing journey as well. And so when you were seeing the maiden mother crone, you were tapping into that divine feminine. You were tapping into that lost goddess aspect.
Yeah.
And it was very freeing to you because you were connecting to that next level of your journey. That's so beautiful. And someone asked about the Green Man.
Yeah, I was just looking over at chats. Rebecca says, you met the Green Man. I need this story.
So with the Green Man, as I was saying earlier, I grew up in Arizona. We didn't have trees around. So my parents would take us up north to northern Arizona for like Flagstaff or Prescott for, winter to see the snow. And, sometimes we'd go to the lakes out there. My dad was, he's big into fishing. And so, we would go fishing together out, up north a little bit. And when we would go there, I was so just awestruck by the trees because Arizona doesn't have these towering, pine trees and oak trees and, whatever, birch trees. When I first saw a birch tree, I almost cried here in North Carolina. I don't know what it is with birch trees, but I love birch trees. And when I was a kid, when I was about 10 years old, we went on this trip. It was more towards, it was like the summer, but it was pretty cool up in the mountains where we went. There was no snow, so it wasn't like winter, but we went just for the sake of, seeing things, for getting out, out of the house and whatever. And I have pictures of this day of me and my little brother, and we were walking around these trails with my parents, and there was this big rock that, probably at this age isn't as big as it was when I was little, but we climbed up on the rock, and I remember my brother being on the rock, and I was looking up at this tree. And as I was looking at the trees, I saw this like blue light was coming from the ground into the trunks, into the trunk of the tree, into the branches, the leaves, going back in, going back down. And I kind of had this moment of like, oh, the trees are alive. Like, okay, that's cool.
I know what you're talking about. I see it too.
And so that was sort of like the first connection that I had of like trees. Like, wow, trees they're like hearing me. They can connect. Like, this is why I feel so good around them. And I would, whenever we would go on these trips, whenever I would go on camping trips, every summer I was camping with friends from the youth group. And I would see a face in the tree. And I would sit there and just look at it like, and I didn't want to bring it up with anybody because by then my spirituality was already dismissed by everybody. And so I would just sit there and I would just look at it and I would like move around trying to like see different angles to be like, is it going to disappear? Is this just an illusion? But it just felt so much like that is where I'm feeling some sort of like emotional connection to trees, to nature, to life, to the earth.
Oh, yes.
And it got, see, I have my Green Man up there. I have my Green Man up there and my Cernunos here.
Love it.
And that was like when
I didn't know.
Deck. I didn't know about the Green Man as a pagan, like, figure or anything. It was just like I just saw a face in the tree all the time. And I always felt this connection, like as if, I could sit there and just talk. I would sit there, at the foot of a tree and just talk and tell my secrets and be like, okay, now I told my secrets. Like it's out there now. I don't have to hold on to it anymore. And I remember when I got this book on Celtic magic and I opened it and there was the Green Man. And I almost started crying. I was like, oh my God.
How old were you? I was 12.
I was 12. Yeah.
I was 12.
Oh my God.
I was in 7th grade and I was working in the school library, 7th, 8th grade. And there was a book on Celtic magic and Bridget had come to me. And I didn't know who she was. And I opened up the book, like with you and the Green Man. And then I was like,
yeah. And then reading like the history. Oh, that's pretty.
The history. It's like it resonates at such a core level.
And that was just kind of like wow, like my experiences are real. There is some meaning to all of this. There's some kind of depth that the universe is like trying to show me. And then that's where I was kind of like, okay, but this doesn't make sense with what the Christians are, what my Christian upbringing is telling me. Like, and that's where I started asking questions where I'm just like, okay, hold on. What is the difference here? What other belief systems are there? Then, I got sucked into ancient Egypt and I got sucked into, it was ancient Egypt and then it was Hinduism.
Yes.
Oh yeah, when I got into the Hinduism too, that was just like a whole other like it was a different kind of connection, but there was still something there where I was just like, wow, like it was almost like, it was like eating really good dessert and you're just like, you don't want to stop.
It's an awareness, and it's you get hungry for it because you're like it's answering and explaining so much in a way that it's like other people get this, like it's not just me. Like you're like, and I studied it in college and that was me. You found it earlier, I think. When did you find like some of the Eastern? Because it was like more Celtic, Egypt.
14,
okay.
14, 15 was around then. And then I started learning a little more about Muslim or Islam in 9th grade. No, it was 11th grade. That was a little bit later. But I had the secret blog, which it's still out there somewhere.
I love it.
It was a secret blog where I was trying to be the good Christian. And I was trying to convince myself that the pagan stuff, the occult stuff was evil. And I would go and write blogs about why it was evil and my experiences and how I was overcoming them. And I started getting emails from people being like, from different religions being like, I want to know more. I want to know about your Jesus. I want to know about your Christianity. And sitting there listening to their stories, I'm just like, wait, I want to know yours.
The dialogue. You opened up communication and y'all were sharing.
Yeah,
that
it was just
beautiful.
He was gauging an interface.
He disappeared.
I was going to say interface. You were really exploring that interface aspect.
Yeah,
I think is what he was going to say.
Yeah. Am I cutting out?
Yep.
You just did that one time. That was the first time I noticed.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Mine was similar. I got in trouble in church a lot though, because I would ask questions and I'm Southern. I was raised Southern Baptist. Like my family were all like pastors. I can't tell you how many times I've been sent to go talk to my cousins and stuff. And like my mom just a few months ago, go talk to your cousins. And I did, and I called him and I'm like, hey, I need to talk to you, but I studied humanities. And so my degree, I studied all these cultures, religions in college. And I was like I was like arming myself with this understanding. Yeah. And then I got into like the Nag Hammadi and I really fell into the Gnostic stuff. I loved a lot of that. But then I was like trying to find the goddess. Because I knew the goddess. I was like, where is she? Like, if there's a god, where's the goddess?
Yeah.
And then I found Ashura. And then I found Sophia. So then I started finding more of that feminine. Because me, it was always like, where's the feminine? Like with you and your maiden mother crone, you were tapping into that, knowing that, okay, there's something missing here.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I love it. Look at this. A lot of people are saying like they would ask questions kind of like with all of us and they would say we would get shut down.
Well, this is I literally make this meme for Breaking Reality because this was literally me in Sunday school. Like I was the one that got in trouble when they're like, well, God created all this. And I'm like, well, who created God? Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, dear. Oh, I just committed the most horrible sin of all.
Yeah.
Mine was asking.
I like this layout.
I like it too. Mine was, I cannot understand if Cain killed Abel and got kicked out, how did he marry a woman from another tribe if they were the only people? And no one can answer this. And then I would ask the question, well, if God created man and God loves man and gave man free will, then why would God destroy man because of that free will? And why would God, and I couldn't understand the murder, the rape, the Leviticus, Deuteronomy, all those freaking, they did not fit with me. My connection was a loving connection, not this, there was more. And it was like that knowing that there was more.
Yeah, I was saying earlier about how the way that the church that I come from functions is that they straight up told you, if you go and ask questions, if you go and seek answers to the questions of the Bible, you're going to find answers and they're going to make sense to you, and then you're going to be led astray. So don't do it. and they would shut down the desire to research, the desire to seek, because it was a threat.
Yeah.
They basically be like, you have to stay dumb to be a good Christian. You have to remain dumb and let the church leaders do the research and just believe them and function like that.
Believe what you're told.
Drove me crazy. Yep.
Don't ask questions. Believe what you're told. Do as you're told. Because otherwise it's fire, hell, and brimstone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the man that's behind that pulpit knows all.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the existential fear as a child of hell.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is.
We touched on that a little.
Child abuse.
Right. We touched on that a little bit earlier before you got on, Tiff. But like, we touched on it about how it's like all these things that it talks about in the Bible and like that whole concept of hell and everything. If you was to take this out of the church and tell this to a kid, like some stranger sitting in a park telling these kind of stories to a child, they would be arrested for this shit. Like the craziness, the psychoticness of some of it, and the way that it's taught the children. It would have been like if you would take it out of the Christian context and say these exact same things. Oh man, that's it. You know, said and done. Like
I like Lilith. Joseph's talking about Lilith. I fell into the rabbit hole with her, really studying, like, you know, the Babylonian culture with the Lilitu, kind of where the Jewish Kabbalah got like the idea of Lilith. But I heard the energy of Lilith. At first, I was like, ugh, demon. But then I was like, wait a second, she's been demonized. A lot of women, is just because she didn't want to lay on bottom, like serious. She didn't want to lay on bottom, and she like told, y'all know the story, and then she got kicked out and got demonized. It's like, come on now.
They are just reaching for anything to make sure that everybody just shuts up and stays quiet and sits
shut
back.
The women up too. The women are the problem.
Well, and we discussed that earlier too, because we brought up the whole, Lilith and Adam, and when the commandment was given about eating the apple of the tree of good and evil, the knowledge, and that Eve, if I remember the timeline and the time frame right, Eve wasn't even created when that command was given.
No, it would have been Adam's responsibility to tell her.
Right. And so if Adam did not tell her and Eve ate of the tree, and then Adam continued to eat of the tree after he knew, it would have original sin would have fallen on Adam and not Eve.
But the woman's the one that gets punished, and the snake.
Right. Yeah. Because God forbid you have the man do anything wrong or bad, then you can't have him be the head of the church. And
that's
he
the thing
can't
else that rubs me wrong. It's the lack of feminine. Yeah. It's all masculine.
Yeah. I actually know a situation within the Romanian church where a man cheated on his wife. He got another woman pregnant. His wife left him, and the church demonized her, kicked her out, and they brought in the new woman that he cheated with, and she's essentially just taken the place of the sinful woman who left her husband. And it doesn't matter why she left him. It doesn't matter the circumstances. He is still respected and revered in the church and holds his, power and his, whatever reputation with the new woman. And this new woman is, she's accepted as if she was always there, and they just forgot about the other one. And that crap happens all the time in this culture that I come from.
And those of us that are big thinkers, those of us that notice these things, we see that the immorality of that, the wrongness. And then like with this, like, Ken says, that big question, if people don't know God, how can God judge them?
Yeah.
And then I would get that, we like my faith didn't believe in purgatory. It was heaven or hell, We're going to hell. What? Like,
Yeah, they swapped. At one Sunday they would talk about there's just heaven and hell. The next Sunday they talk about how everybody's going to rise from the grave because they're sleeping until the revelation.
See, that was the same shit that I got too. There was heaven and hell, but then there's the whole rapture and everyone's asleep in the graves and it gets into this whole craziness. And I'm sitting there,
that dead will rise thing.
Yeah, and as a kid, I'm sitting there going, "Holy shit, zombies!"
Dude, that's what I'm be cremated.
Fucking zombies.
I'll be cremated. Get that.
Oh, I did. I said that. I told him. I'm like, burn me. I don't want to be a zombie. and then I had the whole question. I'm like, well, shit, if I'm cremated, then how am I going to rise when it's the rapture and I'm supposed to go? What do my body's gone. What do I do?
There's entire churches that are
where am I hanging? If I'm cremated and if I'm not in the grave, where am I hanging out? What am I doing? Am I a ghost now? Is that what ghosts are? Cremated people?
Exactly. It totally gets you as a kid. It's like,
yeah.
And then other kids aren't even questioning. They're just doing what they're told. And you're like, wait a second. I got questions. Like,
yeah,
that's what got me was when I
little kids playing Jesus and Roman soldiers beating the shit out of Jesus on Sunday morning.
Oh yeah, and that's acceptable, but you can't have somebody doing a Yule gathering outside their own yard.
I had a church that did the biggest Easter thing, and they did this full Passion of the Christ reenactment. It was so traumatic because that character of Yeshua, we all, dude, how can you not cry? And then they're doing the whip with the light flashing, but not showing it. And you can hear it. And I'm 11.
Yeah.
It's holy crap.
Yeah.
It's a lot of child, it's that manipulation within that dynamic, that structure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's the indoctrination stuff that I know a lot of people come across my stuff on Facebook and TikTok, and everybody's like, "You're a Christian hater." And I'm like, I'm not. I have children that are, they have decided to be Christian, and they can understand the difference between what Jesus teaches and what the church is doing. And they're conversations that we can actually have. What I am against is indoctrinating any children. Let the children decide for themselves. Don't fearmonger them. Don't go into, just trying to brainwash and manipulate the way that they think. Let them ask questions. Let them research. Let them listen to what their soul is attracted to. My soul was attracted to the Green Man and Celtic since I was, 10 years old.
Yep.
If I would have just gone down that path from the beginning, where would I be now? At the same time, I understand. I could see the pieces, how things have moved around on my chessboard of life, to get me where I am now. And I do appreciate everything that I've gone through. I appreciate the suffering that I've had. I appreciate everything that I grew from, and I understand how I got here where I am now. But I still wonder sometimes, would I, be just a little further, along in my journey, or what, other kinds of, lessons would I have had in my life? But I have a lot of people who are just like, no, you're just, you're not a hater. You've got friends who are Christians.
Exactly. When you're open and you're teaching that openness of understanding that we all have similar foundations. We all, and it's a respect for each other's faiths and paths.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. Everything has its lessons, everything has its truth to it, and I just want to have those conversations, and I want to be able to do my own seeking and to think critically, and I want to be able to teach my kids to think critically and to decide what path they're going to walk because of what they want to learn and what they're drawn to, what's naturally curious to them. That's what life is going to bring you the greatest happiness, is when you can seek what you're curious about, when you can fill your life with your own curiosities.
And embracing their abilities, their gifts, if they're an empath, if they're a clairvoyant, if they're a medium, not shutting that down and being like, that my child can see ghosts and spirits, that's demons. It's beautiful. And there is a movement of a lot of people that are raising their children in more open ways.
Yeah, it's getting back to that again. And I mean,
like there's a divide.
Oh, there really is, because there was, I mean, at one point in time that was the way that we were raised. I mean, that was the traditional tribal way, is you honor your gifts, you embraced your gifts, you stepped into your gifts, you know. But now it's, those gifts are demonized because, and here's the really screwed up thing. They're demonized by the church when Jesus himself said, "You will go on to do even greater works than I have done." Telling his disciples, "You're going to do things even more amazing than what I can even do."
You know,
because that power is within. Because that power is within you.
There's a lot of people that don't claim Christianity that are walking more of a Christian path than most organized religion aspects.
I would say a lot of people out there walk more of a Christian path. A lot of your pagans walk more of a Christian path than a lot of your actual Christians do.
If you look at the actual teachings, and then if you dig into like the Nag Hammadi texts, Gospels of Thomas, stuff like that, that's where it's very onistic. It's very, it's a total different view than what ended up being taken in the was it Nicaea?
The Council of Nicaea.
The Council of Nicaea, where they threw those out. All those are heretical. Let's destroy all of them and the people. Because it questioned that authority. It gave people the authority.
And you got to consider the fact, the reason the Nag Hammadi was not modified was the Nag Hammadi was not found until 1945. So it was found thousands of years, or what was it? It was like 8.
The dating on him was.
I can't remember when the Council of Nicaea was held. But everything since that council has been modified. They canonized the Bible there. They chose what books would go in, what books wouldn't, the order that they would go in.
Oh, the order's all jacked up.
I mean everything was.
When I took Bible Lit, my eyes blew open because I was like, what? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John didn't actually write it? It's author F, J, C, and D. And I'm like, holy shit balls.
Yeah. And then that Genesis is written by they believe at least 7 or 8 different authors, and maybe some say up to 12 different authors wrote Genesis.
Well, that's why you have 2 creation stories. That's where Lilith comes in.
Yep.
Because Lilith has to explain the different, you have the creation of earth and you have the creation of man, and then there's a gap here. And so, that's where you get her character, It's very interesting though to say the mythology of it and look at it like that, understanding Celtic lore, understanding and not demonizing anything.
Well, and it's interesting because I even looked at some of the stuff. I get big into looking into the history and studying everything. And one of the things that I was looking was the Exodus story, when the supposed children of Israel leave Egypt and they go into, they're heading to the promised land. They spend 40 years in the desert, and you have the whole story of Moses and Aaron and Joshua and the
manna.
The manna, which, just eating some magic mushrooms while you're out in the desert, hey, whatever. Cool.
Dude, I have a question about burning bushes. All right. Is that symbolic? Is it burning bushes?
Hold on. Depends on, it can be symbolic of a couple of different things. It can symbolic that you need some antibiotics.
Go eat some moldy bread, buddy. You got some no, I'm just wondering if it was no. There were plants out there in the desert, dude.
Hold on a second.
There's this one guy that had this interpretation. He'd been he was studying with this group of the whole biblical history, and he came out with this whole article that totally blew the lid off his stuff. And he's like, dude, the whole thing is symbolic of a big psychedelic trip. And he was like a psychologist or psychiatrist, you know. And he's like, look at this, you know, look at the symbology in so much of the stuff.
I would love for one day God to come down and be like, guys, this is all, it was just one big trip.
You know? I mean, some say like the holographic, you know, theory or the, you know, simulation. I mean, I'm not going to like discount some of that. I don't know. You know, I mean, like with us and our shifting and our realities and there's something.
Yeah. There's something more than whatever it is we're all being given here.
Exactly. And I dig in so much in like the ancient truth stuff because I'm such an archaeology nerd and history nerd. I dug into the Anunnaki stuff like a psycho. I've read like all the Sumerian text stuff and, you know, which is interesting. You know, I mean, like ancient alien stuff. I don't know. You know, I mean,
that
yeah. Hancock. Have you watched Ancient Apocalypse?
I have not.
On Netflix. It is. What's his first? Hancock. He's. I love him. I follow all his stuff. I'll just send you the link to it. Ancient Apocalypse is a great series, though, because my parents were very dogmatic Southern Baptists. Through like experiences with me, finally they're kind of opening up more. And Dad loved Ancient Apocalypse, and it kind of connects everything with all these ancient world civilizations before the flood.
See, I love stuff like that. That's the stuff me and my husband can sit and just binge watch all the time.
Graham Hancock. It's his stuff. He's amazing. Y'all will love it. That one.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yep.
Okay, so
what did you think about it?
You was asking about the burning bush. This taps into that a little bit. This is a book by Rick Strassman.
I've heard of that book.
Rick Strassman was probably because I've told you about it.
Yeah, probably.
Strassman was the first doctor to do scientific studies, clinical studies with DMT or dimethyltryptamine, which is a naturally occurring compound that occurs in our bodies, but when you take it in a concentrated dosage, it has a very psychedelic effect. And so he was doing clinical trials with this, trying to study the effects of DMT. And what he ended up getting was everyone that had an experience with DMT came back, and not everyone, but the majority of the people, I forget what the actual numbers in the study was. I had that book, but I don't have it anymore because I loaned it to someone, never got it back. But like a significant portion of the group that was undergoing all these clinical trials came back and was giving the same spiritual based kind of experiences from using DMT in these settings.
My ketamine stories.
They were having very profound spiritual connections from using DMT. So they end up dubbing DMT the spirit molecule.
Yeah.
Wait, Josh, is it produced in the pituitary gland?
It's in the pineal.
Okay. Oh my God.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me go into a couple things with this. They believe that it's produced in the pineal. They don't know. They also know that it is there's some production of DMT that happens within the lungs. They know that the pineal gland activates with DMT in the body.
That makes sense because that was during the time where I had the pituitary tumors and pineal cysts, and I had them in my 20s, and I was having weird experiences. And then I had them again during my big crazy ass, like, oh my God, reality is not what it's not what I thought it is. And like that one, and where I was plugged in, and I had the tumors then, and I wonder because they produce different hormones. I take medication to shrink them, and it really messed up my hormone system. So I'm wondering, because the human body produces this chemical naturally, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's what causes you to have your dreams. And at the moment of death, you have a massive DMT drop happen in your body. Like
that is why you had the out-of-body experience.
The level of dosages that we would take for a shamanic DMT journey is what your body releases.
Holy shit. That's why it feels like when I'm doing the ketamine and I'm floating above my body before I go into that K-hole, that's like what it's like when I've had my near deaths and I'm looking down. And it's almost like in the dream state too. Bizarre. And I gotta say this. I had quit drinking fluoridated water.
Okay, that's a very good thing because the fluoride will actually calcify your pineal gland.
And that is a whole thing that comes from like Nazi Germany, right? They were using it to sedate the Jewish people.
Joseph, I am very shamanic in my background and training and everything I do.
Interesting.
Yes.
I'm going down a rabbit hole, sorry.
Right. And the fluoride comes, like you said, comes from back in the Nazi Germany era when they were using it for all kinds of different things. Because, fluoride is extremely, extremely toxic.
About the time that they changed our music from 432 hertz to 444 too.
Yep.
I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a thing, and it was used on the Jewish people. There's all kinds of experiments on it.
And there's actually a big thing of that. They believe that's why Prince was killed because he was getting ready to come out about the music industry and the 432 hertz and the 440.
Dude, Kanye did, and Kanye is like, woo, but he talked about it, and they shushed him.
Well, and Michael Jackson was doing the same thing. And the other thing is Michael Jackson was about to break away from Sony. And when he did, he had control of over half of Sony's music library. And he said that when he broke away, he was taking it all and he was converting it all back over to
432 hertz.
And they had a fit. And then the next thing you know, Michael's dead.
Well, the 432 hertz is a natural rhythm. It's the connection, like, to God. It's a connection to ourselves. It's what we resonate at. It's more natural to us. And what we're listening to now in our music, it's very discordant. Like when they've done studies on it with ice crystals and with water, it's like jagged, it's angry looking under the microscope. And then you do the 432 hertz and it's like mandalas and flowy. And we're mostly water.
Yeah.
444.
I gotta look into this.
444. The 444 hertz, what they tune it to is basically considered a dead frequency. It doesn't really activate or vibrate anything.
That's it. That's why it's jagged. It's discordant.
Michael Lee Hill, who's been a guest on the show, there's actually on my YouTube channel, there is an episode with Michael Lee Hill where we talk about 432 hertz and a lot of the stuff around it. And he goes into talking about, like, he has worked with NASA and stuff on a few different things, and they've worked with this frequency and then different modulations of other frequencies, and said that they believe that they've actually been able, we won't say believe, they've been able to achieve creating an anti-gravity field using that. And they believe that's how they built the pyramids and these large temples where they were moving these massive slabs, is they were using frequency and vibration to change everything, to be able to pick it up, to move it. It would change its basically when you get it vibrating at the right thing, it basically would become weightless and they could move it, easily.
The guy with the salt castle in Florida, the old guy from like the 30s or 40s that built this like crazy ass structure, this like megalithic structure by himself at night, and they don't know how he did it. And there's a lot of theories.
Oh yeah, he didn't use any kind of modern tools or
anything. They say it was sound.
No cranes or nothing. But he
knew how the Egyptians moved the pyramids. Is what
he had everything all sealed off where people couldn't see him doing his work at night. He had all fenced off where people
What was his name?
I can't remember, but kids would try to sneak in to see what he was doing because, like, there would be, these big stones, and the next thing you know, the next day he's got them raised up into these giant structures and these giant like megalithic Stonehenge-esque kind of structures. Yeah, and he was a little dude. It wasn't like, you know.
And he was a hermit. He stuck to himself. He was kind of like the weird guy that did weird stuff at night, you know, and it was a super secret. His last name starts with an S. But anyways, a lot of that is frequency. And that and it goes back to like us being able to, there's something going on that is affecting us, and we're finally waking up to it to be like, hey, like, that's not right, you know? So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
It's like solfeggios, like the Gregorian chants. Those are the ones that are like based on like our chakra systems and stuff.
Yeah.
And they
I used to listen to those all the time.
I still do every single night when I sleep.
When I had my big awakening, I was listening to Steve Halper and Chakra Suite, and it was the solfeggios. And I was meditating to it, like I was doing yoga and stuff, and boom, you know, so maybe the frequency also taps into something with the harmonics.
And when I work with different psychedelics and different ceremonies and stuff, I work with the solfeggio frequencies, because depending on what I'm wanting to work with, I'll work on tapping in and tuning in with that frequency and working with that frequency for different things. So the music that I'll play will literally be different frequency, vibration, and music to match up with what I'm doing.
What is a meta? Diana, you're a meta.
I don't. What is a meta?
What? I'm dying to know. Like, what is a meta? He's trying to analyze me. I'm a difficult reader. Meta, Diana.
I'm curious now. Well, I know I looked at human design. If you've ever heard of that, the human different. I can't remember it now. It's been so long.
It's beautiful. The meridian.
There was something with metas in that too, I think. Is that it? I think there was something there, but I don't remember.
Metas exactly. Or meridians?
Metas.
There, I delved into it a little bit. I had a friend that did mine, and I'm a generator or something, something like that.
Yeah, I'm a manifester.
Metaphysic. Okay.
Metaphysic.
You're metaphysic. Oh, nice.
You're a metaphysician.
Ooh. I like metaphysical stuff. Metaphysical stuff is cool.
Yeah, that's the stuff I got sucked into, the metaphysical stuff. I guess unknowingly when I was like 12 or 13. I didn't really know it was called metaphysics until I was in my 20s. But,
my dad's a geologist, and I was always into all of the stuff that was going on, you know? And then the metaphysical aspects. But not music, more top draw stuff. What?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, Joseph.
With the metaphysical stuff, I have more to share on that. But would it be all right if I would step away and say goodnight to my little kids?
Go for it.
Because they got to go to bed, and it's probably already past, and they're all waiting for me over here.
By all means.
I'll mute myself really quick and go say goodnight, and I'll be right back.
I'll remove your camera from it, and then when you come back, I'll add you back.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay.
Metas are harder to read, but Joseph can't read me, so I don't know, Joseph. What do you think? He got you as a shaman.
Yeah, so, but I don't hide that at all.
Well, I don't hide my stuff. I keep telling Diana she's a druid. Girl, I can see that because of her connection. I totally see that.
Yeah.
He says, want to bet, huh?
Huh?
Huh? Joseph, you gotta elaborate, dude. And I'm very shielded too. So if you're trying to psychically read me, I got crystals around me and stuff, man.
And she's very warded right now too.
Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff happening. So I've got a lot of protections. I redid a bunch of my wards. Just keep talking to me.
I think he likes your accent.
Do you like my Texas accent? That's an accent. I love her.
What you looking at? Is it Rosie?
Yeah, oh, it's Kiki.
Oh, Kiki.
I've had orbs everywhere.
Oh, I figured Rosie was trying to bite him again.
Dude, she went nuts the other night and like pounced on top of me and was trying to bite the air. And I looked at the camera and I had sparkles and orbs like flying all around me. And Rosie was like growling at them. They were messing with her hardcore. I was like,
the only thing that is funnier is Rosie trying to catch the hail.
oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my baby. She was trying to play fetch with golf ball sized hail during a big hailstorm.
And had no cares in the world that she was getting beat to crap by the hail.
She got that one and she bounced it. She was like, I got it, Mama.
I know, I saw her. It was hilarious.
But you know, that's our little companions, like you and Tanner. You know, they're such a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
They're our kids. Like how Diana's tucking her babies in. Our animals are our kids.
It's so funny when so I sold off my flutes today, and the guy who made the flutes or who bought them, and so him and his wife came down to hang out and pick them up and everything, and they just absolutely, I mean, Tanner just loves them, and he jumps up and he just curls up next to Joseph and lays down next to him and just doesn't budge. Joseph's just sitting there petting on him, loving on him, and Tanner's just in heaven.
That's when you know them good people. Like when my dog doesn't like somebody, I'm like, ooh, something's wrong with them.
Well, I mean, Joseph and his wife Sage, I mean, they're good people. They're both Native Americans. I'm not sure what Sage's tribe is. Joseph is Lakota Sioux.
This one keeps hitting and running my calves.
Kiki.
Yeah, she's got her little bell, so I can hear her. She's my ninja.
Look at her. She's like, ah, no, human touching me.
She's like, I hate being held. She's a very independent cat. She has not down at all.
Oh, here she is. She's back.
All right.
Look at this oracle card that just my cat knocked out. Earth Magic.
Oh, nice.
Earth Magic. Girl, Diana, this is your card.
So we was just talking about our animals like they are, you know, because
I still have my head things on. So
Yeah.
you're like, if my dog doesn't like someone, I know there's a problem. No dog likes me. My own dogs don't like me. I was like, do I have like a black soul or something?
I bet Tanner would absolutely love you.
I bet my baby would love you. She would.
That's what everybody says. and then I remember one time I was working at Camping World, and so it's dog friendly. Everybody can bring in their dogs while they're wandering around the store and stuff. And I'd just be walking, doing my job, going from one place to the next, and I would have these dogs like lunging at me and snarling, and the people are just like, I've never seen my dog do this before, and I'm like, I wasn't even looking.
Interesting.
But I've been a horse whisperer since I was little, though, and I had some weird thing with fish. Where I would be like, I'd go into a lake or an ocean or something, and then I'd end up with fish just swimming around me. And I'd be
interesting.
Like what is this? But dogs have it rarely get a dog with a.
Well, that's a good theory.
That's right. Jonesy, I love you.
Yeah, that alpha. That alpha predator vibe.
I'm like, I have dogs, but they absolutely just want my husband all the time. If he's there, I'm nothing.
What about
so
cats?
I was like, well, cats are good. I have always had a thing with cats too. And ever since I was little, I had this special connection with cats. When I found out the whole thing about ancient Egypt, thinking cats were like gods, I was like, this is clearly there's something there that I'm picking up on spiritually to understand.
Well, then obviously,
right here looking at me.
Obviously, you're probably all tied into Freya then too.
I've had experiences there. I've had experiences with I've had experiences with the Celtic pantheon. I've had my Norse experiences within the last 4 years because I didn't know anything about the Norse. I didn't know any of the history. I didn't even know, like, I knew that, like, Thor and Loki in Marvel Comics was based off of, like, Norse stuff, but I didn't know about the culture or anything. I never actually got to that point of studying it yet. And I was I'm doing the schooling for my bachelor's in metaphysical sciences. That's why I was like, metaphysics was like my I love metaphysics.
Through?
It's the University of it's UMS, University of Metaphysics.
Yeah, hey,
I'll have to send you the information.
You don't have to.
Josh is doing it.
Oh, you're in that too?
I'm not kidding you. He's doing the same thing. I'll be right back. I get my charger.
Okay. And so, like, as I was, starting, some of that stuff up some years ago, like the beginning stages of it, because I had to take a long break because of a family situation we had. But at that time I was, taking those classes, and the meditations that you have to do for the to finish your classes. I would go into these meditations and I would start seeing these symbols. And I'd be like, what is that? So I would come out of it and I would draw the symbols on a paper and be like, I don't know what this is, but this is what I saw. It was so clear. And at one point I drew what looked like one of the staves from the Helm of Ah, the Helm of Terror, the Norse symbol. And I drew it and I posted it somewhere on a group somewhere. And they're like, oh, this is from, it looks like one of the staves from this. Right. And I looked at it and I was like, holy crap, that is, that's exactly what it looked like. And over those next few days, like, I would keep seeing like runes, but I didn't know that they were runes at the time. I was like, I knew that, runes existed by then because I had just started looking into it.
Right.
And I was like, okay, maybe there's something that I need to consider here. Maybe there's something, like, I keep seeing them in meditations. I keep seeing them everywhere I'm going. Maybe I need to start reading runes. So I went ahead and I told my husband, I was like, I think I need runes. Like, this is something's telling me this. And he's like, all right, let's go find them. And so we got up same day and we went to a local metaphysical place. And I was looking through, like, they had like these wicker baskets of just like little velvet bags of runes. And I would pick one up and I'd look and I'm like, I have a feeling the ones that I need are blue, and they're all the same size and shape. Like, they're not like different rocks or stones or something. And my husband's like, well, where'd you see them? And I'm like, I didn't.
You're like, in my head. In my head.
Yeah, I've seen them in my head. I'm like, I feel like this is what they are. Right after I'd said that, I put my hand down in the wicker basket. I pulled out this other one and I pulled out these runes. And little blue square ones that are all, same size, same shape, so you can't mix them up.
I have my wooden ones.
Yeah, I have. Here's my wooden. I have birch ones. Somebody made me out of birch wood. I have bone ones, and then the resin ones. But that's pretty.
I've got wooden and moonstone. I'm very much like, tarot was my first thing. I was at a bookstore with Dad and I saw these cards and like they just called to me, and Dad got them for me, and I started studying tarot when I was young. And y'all are the runes. I came into runes a little bit later. I'm interested. How are you liking the program?
I like it because everything, like, when it comes to metaphysical stuff, it's all stuff that I already somehow understand. Like, it already is in there, and it's like I see it and I piece it together before I even get to the end of the lesson, and I'm like, I know this already. Yeah. This is how I've always functioned. This is how I've always seen things.
Well,
and
I think Josh has been trying to get me to take it.
And let me ask you this. Because Dr. Masters is who wrote all the material that we cover for the most part. Like, it's most of it is, like, they've added some stuff in through the years, but most of the material is the original material that Dr. Masters wrote. And the way that he wrote it was in a way that no matter the background that you're coming from, this is going to make sense to you once you start working with it. You can be Christian, you can be pagan, you can be Hindu, you can be Muslim, wherever you come from.
Beautiful.
This material is not presented in a manner that it's like, oh, you have to believe in this or you have to do this. It is presented in such a beautiful manner, and it's...
You work at your own pace too, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I love courses like that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing with the module and stuff from Mary as well.
Which one you're doing for the Masters in Metaphysics? Sorry.
I am personally going to end up... I started off with a focus in mystical research, but I'm going to shift and go for a PhD in metaphysics, science of metaphysics or metaphysical sciences, and then add on the mystical research and a couple of the other PhDs after.
And then ultimately, okay, and then like with Diana, yours is the Masters in Metaphysical Studies, right?
Yeah, metaphysical sciences. Yeah, I was gonna go more for like the religious side of it, just because of my background. And I'm like, no, I just want to, because my whole work with Runes and Ravens, before it was Runes and Ravens, it was called Collective Truths. And it's like the bridging of spirituality and science and making sense of things for anybody coming from either side of the spectrum. And so I didn't want to tie myself to anything that felt even remotely just religious. I wanted it to be, it was almost like my little, symbolic breakaway from that. So
that was kind of me with Reiki. I like with you, I started seeing these symbols, and I like ever since I was a kid, I was drawing Choku-rei, which is like the first main symbol in Reiki. I was always doodling like these symbols and spirals and all the time. Just weird, like Japanese looking stuff. I had no clue, And then after, like, I came across my first mentor after my big awakening. I was just guided to the spiritual store one day after teaching middle school kids. And I was like, oh my God, like, it was just so much energy. And I walk in and she's like, oh girl, come here. And then I got my first Reiki manual and I was looking at it. And like with you, like the symbols, like I can look at journals that I drew when I was 13 and those symbols are there. And I'm like, what? It's amazing how our consciousness works.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like for me when I went out and like when I got my runes, the story of how I got my runes was I was walking through a flea market. There's a Renfest that's close to where this flea market is. And there was a witch from the Renfest that was there set up that weekend because the Renfest had just closed. She was still in the area. She set up that weekend. And I was just walking through the flea market, not thinking a thing, just looking around, seeing what's out there. More than likely, I was out there probably looking for some kind of collectibles because I collected different like collectible cards and like figures and stuff like that. And I'm walking through and this lady, I walk by, she's like, hi. And then, I say hi to her. She's like, can I give you a reading? I'm like, what do you mean a reading? She tells me a tarot reading. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, how much? And she goes, no, I just want to give you one for free. And I'm like, okay. And so sat down and she gave me a reading and it was a cool little reading and stuff. And then I look over and they weren't in this bag. They were in a red bag. And it was like a really crappy bag. Ended up getting a better bag for him. My oldest sister ended up getting this bag for me, put them in it. But I looked over and I saw this red bag and I'm like, what's in there? And she's like, oh, those are runes. And I'm like, hold on, like runes, like, Norse runes? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I want to see. And so she reached over and she grabbed the bag and she opened them up and poured them out on the table. And I'm like, are those for sale? She's like, yep. And I'm like, how much? She goes, I'll sell them to you for whatever you've got. And I reached in my pocket and I think she had like $30 on them. I reached in my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill and she said, they're yours. And that's what I had. And I've had these runes since. And it, she made them. she carved and painted the runes on each of the stones. And I've had them since. Absolutely love them. And
that's awesome.
It's funny because even at one point in time when I was married, I left them with my sister because my ex-wife didn't want me to have them.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So instead of getting rid of them, I left them with my sister, who was very much into the same kind of things. And I told her, I'm like, if you want to work with the runes, by all means. I know you've talked about it, and she said, so I left the runes with her, and that was it. Like, I didn't hardly ever talk to her about them, mention about them, anything. And then when I moved back to Ohio after I'd gotten divorced, I had met her for lunch one day, and she brought me a couple of stones that she had, a couple of gems that she brought, and she brought me my runes in this bag. She's who put them in this bag. And she brought them back, and she goes, "Here, will you finally take these things back? They won't stop calling for you. They're annoying the hell out of me."
I love it. Both of y'all. That's beautiful.
And so, like, these are my runes. I don't work with any other set of runes. These are the ones that I was called to, and these are my set.
Yeah, these are my blue ones are the ones, they're my usual go-to. But if I'm doing like an in-depth reading for someone and I've already used so many of them, then I'll start going into. I love doing them. They're one of the things that, I mean, I've started with oracle readings, and that's how I first started building up my work and my my gifts in reading. But when I got to runes, it was like they quickly just sort of overcame the calling. Basically, was always like, no, I need to pick up my runes instead of my cards right now. It's the runes that I got to use right now. I learned them really quickly too. Like they were immediately absorbed.
I lit some candles.
Nice.
Tiffany and fire. Be careful, y'all.
Dude, but me and fire are like that too. It just likes me, Josh.
Tiff scared the hell out of me one night doing some ritual work for me. She went to burn a bunch of bay leaves. She took like 5 bay leaves and threw onto a coal, and it just went poof.
I have no fear. Me and fire, man. I have burned off my eyelashes on it. I've had my bangs cut. I have a scar. But
then when I pull this out to like my Palo Santo, Tiffany freaks out.
I'm like, George.
She's like, I love fire. And I'm like, really?
Joseph, I don't need tools either, but they definitely help.
Yeah, I actually just gave a spiel on tools and about how I don't need to use, like, none of us need to use tools.
Shoot.
But for some reason, other people, when they're coming to you for a reading, they're more quickly going to accept a message from rocks than they are from the mouth of another person. And
yes, it's a doubt thing.
Yeah.
And a fear thing. Like, how can they really know that?
Yeah, they're just tools that we use. They're
just tools. And the symbols speak to us, and it's a language. Like, I'm burning Palo Santo right now because to me it's so cleansing and blessing and purifying, and I lit my 3 candles because I was feeling someone poking around on me. Joseph's trying to spy up on my ass, and I don't like it because he can't read me and it's driving him nuts.
He's gonna get smacked with a big old chunk of tourmaline here in a minute.
I'll throw up my black salt. Don't make me do it.
I love the thing that said my therapist told me to carry these crystals around with me. They'll help repulse people. I said it's been working great all day. Every time someone talks to me, I throw one at them and they run away.
Oh, he says I'm an elemental. He can't figure out what one. Yeah, actually, I got an old soul, baby. We all do. All of us do. Any of us that are here having these conversations, we're old souls. We are. And
I've learned to recognize new souls when I see them, and they're not very often. They're not very common. At this point, I think old souls are much more common than the new souls. But I have a couple relatives who are new souls or are having babies that are new souls, and you can just see it in their eyes and in their face, and it's like, oh, this is their real first experience in this world. Where other, nieces and nephews that I have, I see them and I'm like, oh, they've been here 8 times. They've been here a handful of times already. Who knows? But
and you can feel the ones that are star seeds, light workers, earth angels. Some of us are so mixed as well because our souls have experienced so many different experiences. And then you add in our genealogy aspect, the genetic aspect, that mind, body, spirit thing, and we're very complicated creatures. It's fascinating. Ken, stop it, Jojo.
Stop it.
Stop it, Jojo. He said you're harassing me. I'm having fun with it. I kept seeing a white mist in the right corner of my eye, and I kept hearing a tapping over by my cards. And then I felt on the outside of my bubble right here, because I'm sitting in a salt circle, I felt male energy, trying to and I was like, dude,
and she knows it's not mine. She knows me.
No, yeah, definitely.
Oh,
no, it's
he's astral. He astrals.
Let me ask this because, and this is for Diana. We've been going for 3 hours. Are you good? Are you ready? Do you need to call this? How are you going? How are you feeling?
I'm probably getting close to having to call it. Obviously we're past 11 now, and
and I know you're not a super late
North
night
Carolina.
person.
Nice. Oh, beautiful.
We're preparing for a weekend where we're having people coming over. We do these occasionally, at least once a year. We do it for Yule at least, but we have these occasional Jonesy, actually Rebecca Jonesy is going to be here. We do these gatherings of just friends who are in the area. And we just do food, we do a bonfire, we just hang out. Jonesy brings some homemade mead. It's just this just a little gathering of people, because usually me and my husband, we just
I need to become friends with Jonesy.
Yeah. Yes.
Love it.
She's amazing.
Jonesy's Jonesy's cool.
Yeah.
I like the energy.
Yeah, she's so much fun. She's she's probably, I think at this point, there's 3 people that we ever really regularly try to invite over that we let into our space.
Yeah, I understand.
She's one of them. Yeah. By goat sacrifice, she usually means our Yule goat.
Right.
This is our mini.
Right.
We get a bigger one and we tuck in our, wishes for the new year, and then we put it on the Yule log.
Set that sucker on fire.
Fire.
Goes back to the Thor's goats too.
Nice.
Yep.
You know what? Okay, before we close, Rebecca, you said you're an author. I'm curious.
Rebecca, you mean Diana?
I mean Diana. Why
Rebecca too.
Oh, because I was looking at
Rebecca
Rebecca's message. She said, or elk or whatever. That's why I said that. Diana, I'm tired, y'all.
Well, Rebecca is an author too, so that's how we know each other.
Okay, so what genre? Do you write more personal accounts? Do you write?
I do fantasy. It's Portal Fantasy. My main series is my way of using a fantasy world to explain reincarnation, soulmates, mortality and immortality, going into old souls, new souls, just everything that I teach on, really. Let me show you really quick.
Are you on Amazon? Can I buy your Josh, we got to share her work. I need a new series. I have not done. Oh my God, that's my thing.
I write under the name LF Oak and Lillian Oak.
Nice.
But this is my main series. I have other books. I have several short stories that all take place within the same world that these take place in. And they're like a crossover between Earth, our modern time, and then the fantasy world. And it's basically this girl who she is a descendant of the gods knowingly. It's not one of those like, oh, you're a descendant, now you have to do this thing. It's not like a surprise thing. It's like I was raised basically being given the texts and the history of the gods, and that if something would ever happen to the gods, that she would have to step up to take the place of her ancestor. And she's raised with the other ones because there's 4 gods in this fantasy world, and she's raised with one of them. It's like they're like best friends. But they're all elementals too. So the main character is the water elemental. The best friend is the fire elemental. And they're basically, the whole story is the becoming their God self. It's connecting with God's source and becoming their God self to, gain all their abilities. And it goes into reincarnation as they're placed in Earth as sort of like a protective measure while they figure out, how
while humanity is going through this thing.
So it's been fun. It's something I came up with my friend Emily when we were like 12.
Girl, I love I got goosebumps. I'm going to read all of your books.
They're up on I recently shared links on there too. So I was like, I'm having kind of like an uptick in my stuff on Facebook. So I was like, hey, everybody who's here, I write too.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Hint, hint, Diana as normal.
Yeah.
Hint. Hold on, I'm in the process of doing something. Give me a minute.
He's gonna share them. I have got to.
I'm not sharing it. I'm in the process of buying you the first one for your birthday.
You can send it to me. Josh and I send each other like cards and stuff.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah,
like we send each other stuff all the time.
I send him witchy stuff all the time. Like
I gotta make sure I've got it going to the right address though.
I'll send Tanner a dog bed and dog treats.
Oh.
It's like when we have a community that we built like within Modern Mystic in Facebook, and we have a group chat and stuff. If you ever want to be added to it, we're all spiritual people, and we just will ask questions and talk and share stuff. And we've got Pam who popped in earlier. She makes like wands and like rattles, and everyone has got these different skills and abilities and talents. It's really cool.
I love that.
And we all gift each other. Like all of a sudden I'll like get like, a feather duster that Pam's made in the mail. And I'm like, yes!
Oh, that's cool. I was just talking to somebody recently about how you have everybody kind of coming out of our broom closets. And everybody's connecting now. And with this, like the living crisis in the US and in the UK, and where everything is just the way that it is. I'm like, I could just see it now. People are going to start coming together, physically and living and building these communities where, it's kind of how, the Christians have, they use their churches as like this, hub for their, their work and their teachings. And I'm like, I feel like this is the direction people are going with, just paganism or anything, like non-Christian in general. Creating the communities where we're going to start being able to find some ways where we're living, together, helping, supporting each other, taking care of each other in a way, that is, physically, mentally, emotionally, being there for each other. And I'm like, just watch, people are going to start gathering, pooling money together, buying, land, building, like little areas where everybody has, their place to live. Everybody comes together to eat, or to, gather when they feel like gathering. But I'm like, I could just see it now, and it just seems like this is what so many people seem to be
always see
towards.
Josh and I talked about it. We've both different times. I've seen different stuff in my head. Like here in Texas, in the hill country, is beautiful with the Guadalupe River. It's gorgeous. And it's
I'm working on manifesting land down
people
there right
come from all over to just go to these retreats here, rehab centers. And I've always envisioned like, this place that like, has like cabins and, like a retreat and there's people that live there full time, a community and a retreat center or something like that.
And growing as much of the food and everything right on the land, so it's like organic and healthy.
Living off the grid more.
And as far as the writing, it looks like you have 3 books that are up on Kindle for free. So there's 3 books, or for 99 cents. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they're not free. They're 99
cents. For a second, I thought they were free. For a second, I thought they were like on
Unlimited.
I thought they were on the Kindle Unlimited for something, for a reason.
I think there's one now that's still free, but there was some changes with Amazon that I don't know what they did. I just stopped paying attention because I don't do it full time anymore.
Rebecca shared it.
But I used to be full time writing. My husband and I would both write full time. I did high fantasy and he did dark fantasy.
Nice.
And
I've read those.
3 years.
So
yeah, we did it for 3 years, and now I'm like, because I don't have to make a living off of it, I just don't look at. I'm just like, whatever, Amazon's gonna do what it does, and I'm just gonna keep writing.
Beautiful though.
So Tiffany, the ones on Kindle you'll have to grab, but I sent you The Lost Voice, which is the first one in the Chronicles of Jadur.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Jadur, yes.
I
have my own little map. Oh, I don't know if you can see it from. It's back there. Is a that's a map of Jadur that I had made.
Nice.
It's actually in the front page of all the books too.
Oh my gosh! So your world building, I love you.
Yeah, I talk about world building on my author stuff a lot. That's what
my favorite author.
Did you ever? Because I know you're into like Dungeons and Dragons and that geekiness too. Did you get into Gary Gygax's world building stuff?
I did. Which is there something? Is there a different title?
Gary Gygax done a series of books. Gary Gygax is who created Dungeons and Dragons. Him and Dave Arneson. And Gary Gygax done a series of books that was all about world building.
Sweet.
And absolutely beautiful series of books. Like they might be out of print because they were old.
Yeah.
But
I haven't looked at that, no.
I might have PDF files of those floating around somewhere. Let me see if I can find them and find the names and stuff of them.
I used to help people with their world building when they were trying to make their world make sense. And I've had people with like, Kickstarters that are starting like D&D modules or Pathfinder modules. And they're like, we need some sort of backstory for this character to make sense with what's going on here. And we can't figure it out. They give it to me and, I do it for them.
I got some other stuff I need to show you because I bought this game. It's a book that's
Joseph's familiar.
It's a role-playing game and it's all in one, and it's a kind of a sci-fi. It's like a really like in-depth sci-fi kind of game, but the whole big part of it's called Burning Empire. And the big part of it is the players help design the world. So like you go through and there's questions and stuff that everyone has to go through and everyone gets to put a vote in, and whatever the vote wins is what goes.
That's cool.
So you can be like, we want to do a low technology world, and then one of the guys is like, no, I'm designing a character that's high technology, but everyone votes low tech, so there goes your high tech character.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
And it like that's the whole way that you design this game is the players have a lot of input in it, and
there's theater like that. It's very cool. It's audience driven. And so it's interactive because the audience gets invested because they're making choices within the storyline.
Yeah.
Tiff, I needed to get you a birthday gift anyways. And when you said you needed a new book, so I figured I'd get you that instead of one of the things that I'd already talked about. You'll
get
still
me
get
off of the Anunnaki stuff, man.
You'll still get the other thing that I told you I was going to get you later.
Oh, gracias. Thank you.
And thank you. That's a sale for me.
Yeah, see, that's the way I looked at it. I'm like, Tiffany said that she wanted to read a new book. She's interested, so I'll get this, and it helps Diana.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win all around.
And it's my B-Day, so I get a new book to dive into. How's
it feel being 21?
Right. Like 5,000. I love books like world building with the characters. When I read, I have the voice in my head. I have the narrators, the theater in me, the actress. I create the characters, what they look like. I have a movie in my head when it's a really good book.
What really bothers me is when I do that, because I do the same thing, and I'll read a book and I'll create the whole movie in my head. I'll imagine what the characters look like, what the scenes look like, everything, and then they make a movie of it, and I'm like, y'all ruined this shit.
See, I already did that on my Facebook page for my author stuff. I already have all my characters made with AI. Like, I went through and I made each one of them so you can actually see what they look like.
I would love that. So I can see what your vision is. So I can have that in my head. I love it. I'm going to go check it out.
And I've been I've spent so much time on Midjourney. Like, I've learned the process. Like, I've learned how to use repeat faces in different scenes. So I can make this actual scenes in my books with the same faces of the characters throughout. So I'm like, I have been spending like these it's been like a month. I haven't really been able to write now because we've had the situation. I had meningitis and it was just a rough month.
Girl.
But before all that, I was writing all the time. And when I would finish like a chapter, I would make a scene in Midjourney and then I'd post like a little snippet, on my Facebook. So you get to see a little bit with the picture and the character and everything. I know people are like, dumping on AI stuff, but it has been such a
it's got its place.
You know what though?
It's got its place.
One of my favorite book series done something similar, but back in the day, it was the Dragonlance Chronicles by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
Yeah.
And Larry Elmore, because it was all part of that TSR D&D crew, because they was all part of that, and this came out under the D&D Dungeons and Dragons books titles and stuff, because Dragonlance is one of those worlds. Larry would do all these really just amazing paintings of these characters and of the dragons, and that way you knew what these characters looked like as you were going through and reading these stories. You could imagine what all these different characters look like. And that to me is, and like they would do, like Larry would release like different paintings of the characters that were based on scenes in the book, just as like part of his art releases and stuff he would do. Like, one day he'd paint, like one of the big battles and stuff. There's one of his paintings actually depicts the death of one of the characters, and it's like a really like.
Didn't they just recently release one after a long time? Like,
and they got they've got another one coming out August 2nd or 3rd, like like either on my birthday or right before my birthday.
Writing is a form of expression like that. It's such a way to connect and explore. It's beautiful.
It's been too long since I've written anything, and I'm feeling it. Like
I'm a painter. I'm the same.
I wish I could. I wish I could paint.
Rebecca said the whole series is restarting. The whole Dragonlance series is restarting.
Oh, is it?
My dad got me into those.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the Dragonlance Chronicles. Margaret and Tracy have put out they put out one book already, and then I think the other one's coming out.
Yeah, I gotta go look again. I'm following both of them.
My first book was The Hobbit, one of my really first books. My dad was like, read this, because my dad's super fantasy, like crazy fantasy stuff. And I had the hardest time, but I read it. And then later when I reread it, I was like, dang, I missed so much. But I was like 11 or 9.
I'm telling you, my very first introduction into fantasy was the Chronicles of Narnia, the C.S. Lewis series. Yes, I said Dragonlance.
Yeah.
Yes,
Margaret Weiss. Yeah, Margaret Weiss's stuff.
Yeah. Margaret and Tracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the
people compared my writing to them, and I was that was the biggest compliment ever.
I'm gonna love reading your books then.
Oh my God, yeah, Tracy, Margaret and Tracy stuff's amazing. If your stuff's like theirs, I'll end up picking this up and reading it myself too.
I will devour it.
I really liked. Oh God, I got distracted again.
And we're at 3:23. I think we're getting tired.
Yeah, I think we should probably call it here because now we're just ranting on rant.
I'm on antibiotics. I've had a sinus infection, so I'm like, eh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's better than meningitis, girl.
Oh,
yeah,
I was gonna say
I've had that 6 times now.
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say my earliest stuff was the Chronicles of Narnia. That was my introduction into fantasy and stuff, and the C.S. Lewis stuff.
I wonder what Diana's was.
I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't remember the titles. I know one of them that really got me into the idea of the real world in fantasy was Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher by Bruce Coville, and I was in like 3rd grade, something like that.
Yeah,
and
4th grade for Chronicles of Narnia here too.
Yeah, got me in the Hobbit.
It was like a story of a boy who gets a dragon egg from a magic shop and hatches it, and he has to keep it secret as he's raising it. And it was like this fantasy real world mashup, and I was like,
one, that Darkstone and Labyrinth as well.
Nice.
All right.
Come to find out that boy grows up to be Hagrid.
I gotta check out, y'all.
Yep,
yeah,
I think it's time for it.
But
everybody,
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for being here.
It's been fun.
I'm so excited.
God,
I'll
send you the link to the stuff afterwards.
Yes. I'm serious. I'm looking. I've been needing a new fantasy genre. I think the last. Oh my God, girl! I've been struggling. I need to get back into some of those things that bring me that joy, that spark, to devour something and wrap my brain around that world. I haven't done that in a long time.
Yep. So, well, the book will be there for you on Saturday.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of my last book series. It was, oh my God, not the Anita Blake stuff. Oh my Lord. Don't even get me started. Kim Harrison, she does some really good stuff with she's a witch, and it's like a magical world. Kim Harrison, her stuff is pretty good, like mystery stuff, but fantasy.
Yeah.
Got a little sexy edge to it, but I liked her stuff. I guess that would be kind of what you're calling high fantasy, and then dark fantasy. Is that kind of the difference between some will get more adultish?
Dark fantasy is more it's just got darker tones, darker
vampires, and
gruesome. It's like my husband's dark fantasy is all based on Slavic myth, and it's all very dark monsters, and it's not happy endings,
like Baba Yaga type stuff and things. And
then high fantasy is more of the magical aspect.
Fantasy or elves, fairies, dragons, that kind of thing. So
love it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. Diana, thank you for being here. Tiffany, I am so glad you were able to join us tonight.
Me too.
I'm so excited that you was able to pop in with us.
Too.
Everybody, I'm not sure what we got scheduled for our next show. We don't have anything scheduled up yet, so I will let you all know as soon as we have something scheduled. Everybody, thank you for coming out tonight. Diana, if you get all your links sent over, I'll put them in on some stuff with this so people can check out your links.
Okay.
That way they can get, they can check out your writing and all that stuff as well. But with that, everybody have a good night, and we will see y'all later.
Thank you.